Okay, so namaste to all, and thank you everybody that you are again here with us. The kind of zeal and excitement you have regarding learning has been proved through this platform, like Pushpaji, Guruji, Dawadi sir, Uttam sir, and many more other people, Samiksha and others. Many people, they are early in the morning. I get the message, sir. When will you get the link? Amazing support, and these are thank you, sirs. Thank you so much to you all, and welcome to all the participants for the seventh day first session. And this is the special session, special in the sense that I know Sagunji and me in I think 2007 to 9 we studied together earlier, and this sort of our relationship, our coordination went on, and right now the way our scholars, young scholars like Sagunji, Sumanji, they have raised themselves, and academic cosmo has the different let me say the flavor, different realization among the people. So it's good to see my friends and see Sagunji, Somanji, and all the participants here, in this platform. Thank you all, and I would like to welcome you. And we have just 4 days remaining to go, and still we have a session. Even we have the religious session as well from the Dr. Chintamani Gautam, Chintamani Yogi. You might have seen him in the transformative research conference by Kathmandu University. He was the speaker there. Before that, starting, let me request all the participants to follow the house rule. We will mute ourselves. And
yes,
because
hello, Dhanji.
Yes.
Could
Yes,
you make me the host or give me the co-host, right?
Yes.
I'll mute everyone, and so it.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
I'm making you. All right. So I've given, sir. Yes. And hope Samit Chaji, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay. So yeah, I got you. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. We are with the speaker Dublin, Ireland, and he's the PhD scholar there. And to introduce him, I would like to request Samiksha Bidari, ma'am.
Okay, hello, good afternoon. Okay, shall I start, Dian?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Sagun Shrestha, who is a PhD student in School of Applied Language and Intercultural Studies in Dublin City University, Ireland. He has earned MA in English Education from Tribhuvan University, Nepal, and MA in ELT from UK. In his PhD program, he is exploring affordances and challenges of ICT in education. And today, he will be sharing with us his expert opinion regarding COVID-19, a blessing in disguise. I'll ask all the participants to help me in welcoming him to our virtual stage. Here you are, Mr. Sagun. Yes, Mr. Sagun.
Sagun, sir, I think he's muted.
Okay. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Samiksha Bidari ma'am, for lovely introduction, and thanks my dear friend DNZ for this opportunity as well. As you mentioned, like we studied together in TU. That's how we began this bond. And right now, even if we are in different, let's say, lands, different places, but still we are connected. It's not only between Dian and me only. Like I mean, Suman Laudari sir is there, and many other colleagues whom I can see, like Pushpa sir, Uttam sir, just to name a few. So many friends are together, and it's more, I would like to have some kind of disclaimer here, more than expert opinion. I would say, like, it's a kind of sharing session. And this session will be, let me first share the screen and talk, but right now, as a background information, like whatever I'll be sharing, in the meantime, like, I have also a feeling like I'll be learning quite a lot from you. So it's more like, co-learning or co-constructing for something new. Now let me begin. Let me share the screen. And I have 1.5 hours, right? Just to confirm, just to double check with DN sir or Samik ma'am. 1.5 hour time, right?
1.5 hours, 90 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me begin now. Okay. All right. So after some thought, I happen to frame this topic, COVID-19, a blessing in disguise, paving a wider road for integrating ICT in education, having thought that this will be more a kind of reflective session, kind of reflection and analysis of the current situation, which can also inform for, to inform, to have some decisions, whatever we decide in terms of intervention of technology in education or in other spheres as well after post-COVID, let's say in the post-COVID situation or in the post-COVID time. So I framed this topic. Once again, I would like to request, before I begin formally, I would like to request host and co-host Suman Lodari, Min Sir, Samit Ma'am, to inform me of some questions or concerns if there are in the chat box, because I won't be able to go through chat box. So, and dear participants, like, since I see everyone as experts again, so if you have any concerns or questions, please immediately, you can raise your hand and inform the host or co-host so that, they can unmute you and then they can put forward your, they can unmute you and then you can put forward your opinion or questions immediately. Or you also can, type in the chat box. So let's make this session as interactive as possible. And in between, I will also ask you to, run your Mentimeter application if you have downloaded. If you haven't downloaded, then simply you will go to menti.com and, take part in a survey, which we have in between. That's it. Again, to remind you, it's just the reflection or analysis. So today I will not be talking about any kind of, established or solid or concrete theory. One. Two, I won't be talking about any particular Web 3.0 tools which you can use in the classroom, because I believe that, let's say, many of us have, familiar with different kinds of tools, and if we know the principles of those tools, we can integrate them. So yeah, with this note, let me begin now. So, okay. This first picture, half filled, not half empty. If we ask some people, and people can, explain in different way this particular, particular state, like whether half filled or, half empty. So today's my, talk will be basically on, on the half filled kind of, or let's say half filled dimension rather than, half empty. So I will focus much on the positive side rather than the negative side. Despite having a lot of, hurdles, troubles or problems that we have been facing due to coronavirus, let's say COVID-19 situation, still there are some opportunities that are emerging, by the way. I'm focusing on that particular aspect. So forgive me, like, if you are thinking like, oh, how come this person can only talk of, half-filled or positive notion rather than, even if there are quite a lot of things which are, really creating some situation which is like frustrating and so on. If you have that notion, then please forgive me. Like, we are talking more on a positive side rather than the negative side today. Something is wrong. Yeah, okay. So the outline of presentation, first of all, we'll talk on opportunities brought by COVID-19, let's say COVID-19. And secondly, we'll focus on issues and concerns related to it. Like, there are opportunities, but there are some issues and concerns as well, which we need to address as teacher educators or teachers, or to some extent, the contributors for policy as well. And post-COVID impact, again, post-COVID impact, particularly in relation to integration of technology in education. So we'll only focus on that aspect. We won't be covering all. So, okay. I'm just noting at time right now. So And then we'll have, yeah, actually, I would like to, have a lot of comments from you as well. Comments and concerns, and comments and questions as well. Sorry, it had to be questions more than concerns, but concerns also work here. So this is the outline of my presentation today. Let's begin now. COVID-19, how do I consider COVID-19 as a blessing in disguise then? Why? Why do I consider? First of all, let me say I, and then yeah, I also can, equally have inclusive kind of sense, like how can we consider COVID-19 as a blessing in disguise? As I have been going through, engagement by different people, basically people involved in education uh, in this COVID period. So I can see there are a lot of new initiatives happening, and particularly some initiatives are, self-initiated initiatives, and some are institutional led as well. For example, online classes. Uh, Definitely, like, this has brought difficulty, no doubt, quite a lot of difficulties in everyone's life. If we talk about the mental well-being, the socioeconomic status of a particular person, of a family, of the community, and, if we go to the macro level, entirely to a country as well. But at the same time, it has brought opportunity to initiate something. For example, like, some teachers have initiated themselves some online classes, and that has made them learn something, by the way. In the meantime, like, some institutions have been kind of pressurized to initiate something as well, because it's the market, it's the, competitive market for them. As a result, they have to, engage the learners who have been admitted to their institution one way or the other. Otherwise, there's a possibility of, attrition, let's say. So they have also initiated this. So I believe, because of, some new initiatives that people, either individually or, in a group, they have initiated this week, I believe, like, it's kind of blessing in disguise. Let's see one of the examples by Pushkar Chaudhary sir, whom I happened to communicate with yesterday. And I found, like, he, as a teacher in his school, TOP school in Kathmandu, like, he has done himself something, something really plausible, relevant as well. Then similarly, even his institution as well has purchased the local, let's say, local LMS by the local provider. I mean, local LMS means, learning management system by the local provider, and they have, used this to provide assignment for the students, and then make students able to submit as well from the same LMS system. So which is really great, by the way. It's more context sensitive thing. Let's see now. It's a Pushkar Chaudhary sir, English teacher from, it's a 1 minute and 15 seconds video nearly. Hopefully you will. Thanks for watching. See, this is what Pushkar Chaudhary as English. This is just a sample of. Sorry, I'm not highlighting. I'm not highlighting only Pushkar Chaudhary here. Pushkar Chaudhary is the representative, let's say representative, character. Let's say a representative teacher who can represent the entire people who are involved in, teaching and learning using some kind of innovative technique right now, as COVID-19 is demanding. So, so what I mean to say here is, like, there are different initiatives done or happening at the very local level, and which are more context sensitive as well. This is all due to, COVID-19 crisis situation, which put forward some kind of challenge, and we accept it wholeheartedly, and we are trying our level best to make it. See, this is the Pushkar's story. Now,
Sagun sir,
please.
sorry. I think we have a few participants who said that the sound was not audible. So maybe would you be able to, recap a bit, what Pushkarji has actually said in the video?
Okay. So, okay. Oh, only of this video, right? Not of mine.
Yeah, only of Puskar's video. Yeah.
Okay. So here, actually, Pushkar sir, what he did is he wrote the very comprehensive introductory email to all the parents, informing that they are going to launch it, and they did it. And secondly, what he said is, their school, Phyak school, also, use the local LMS, the LMS provided by local software company, and they are assigning students, they are giving some homework to the students from there so that they can submit as well. So this is what I mean, simply, like, he's been initiating something new, making students engage online, which he hadn't done earlier. And it was not necessary at all earlier, because it was all the physical classroom. Probably integration of technology could have been, I guess he had done some, but I mean, going completely online this way, or distant education this way, it's something new which he could initiate. And many of us, I mean, probably many of us are, if we just check, many of us are doing as well. At times, probably it can be due to the pressure as well, or with our own zeal or enthusiasm too. So this is it. Interestingly, what he has done is, this is more interesting. Let me share again the survey that they carried out, and he also initiated the survey as well. So to understand digital competencies of teachers, what Phyak school did, again, he was one of the team members there as well, is first of all, they carried out survey to understand the digital competencies of the teachers. Sometimes what might happen in some of the schools is, like, all of a sudden school decides without caring, without understanding the strengths of teachers at their own institution, and then this is the kind of pressure for teachers, and there can be a conflict immediately between teachers and administration, between teachers and students, because of let's say incompatibility in relation to the competencies required to conduct any kind of activities, by the way. So this is really praiseworthy thing that Phyak school and yes, the Pushkar sir has done, by the way. See, for example, they have, in various themes, for example, computing basics in this theme, they have carried out a survey like, okay, I will just quickly show you. I know how to work on a desktop or laptop, mark only 1 over, yes or no or unsure. See, this will give them clear data. We were talking earlier in my earlier session, like in other different classes, like I was talking about the digital competencies or digital literacies. So this is how, like, we can evaluate what kind of competencies in relation to use of technology that teacher has right now. And is our school ready to go? If not, what different other strategies that we need to adopt? So it's more like, understanding one's own human resources and planning as well. This is really praiseworthy. Like other schools or other, let's say, other concerned people can follow this as well. And this is always, we also talked about the kind of empirical best, practices. So this is what empirical best practices can be. And okay, these are the questions related to, did I do it or somebody did it? Okay, so these are the questions related to computer basics, and I will show you next. For example, I know how to create diagram, artwork, and insert pictures and symbols in my document. To understand more, I can convert Word files into PDF or PPTX. So yes, no, or unsure. Now this will give them the clear, insight, like how our teachers are. I know how to use Unicode and copy it in Word document or PPT. See, this will again. Next is school LMS. we cannot assume, like, sometimes we work more on assumption, by the way. We cannot assume that all teachers, because we know them, and all teachers can be competent in, handling technology. If we have that assumption, that can bring frustration as well. And because of this frustration, there can be conflict between, teachers and parents, teachers and students, and teachers and administration. As a result, there is no proper interaction. And once there is no interaction, and then the whole activity can be failed, or activity system can be failed. So school elements, for example, I can log to school elements, create assignment, attach files, check assignment details, and edit them. Yes, no, or unsure. I can find assignments submitted by students, download and view them, give teacher and student comment and save. Again, so now Zoom cloud meeting. Next is Zoom, like whether our teachers have ability to use Zoom or not. I know how to log on to Zoom and join a meeting. I know how to host or schedule a meeting with or without a password. I know how to schedule a meeting with my personal meeting ID or system generated ID, yes or no. So this way they carried out a survey, and they decided not to go to the Zoom meeting immediately. So that's a very much good decision. Like, first of all, understanding situation and training, let's say training them with locally available resources, to those people as well, to those teachers who haven't acquired enough digital competencies to handle these tech tools. And later at the second phase, and going, let's say, using asynchronous and synchronous communication to handle the classes, online classes. See, this is a proper planning. And if we have this kind of insight to launch, this kind of insight to conduct the classes, then it will be really easy, by the way. So this is really praiseworthy. This is all about self-initiated or institution-initiated, let's say, initiatives, and which is again kind of blessing due to COVID-19. Second one. Now my second point is, can you lead 4-day workshop for ELT teachers? It's again very much, it has again a very much exciting story to share. What happened was, when KU communicated with us, like Suman sir, me, and some other colleagues as well, like I thought like this would be only the this would be the workshop for Nepalese teachers. But what happened was, once KU announced its let's say notice using, let's say, Facebook, primarily social platform, like social networking platform, and even the teachers from Pakistan, Bangladesh, India joined. So now see the kind of limitation that has been, let's say, to some extent I can say broken as well, like the geographical barrier. It went beyond that particular geography that we thought of, and then many practitioners who are working in the same field could be benefited through this particular workshop. So again, this has been possible due to, because there is crisis, everyone became so much interested in enhancing their own digital competencies. And because there's crisis, KU initiated this voyage as well. So all the everything has its own positive side, and yeah, it is with this coronavirus crisis situation as well. I don't want to extend this further. This workshop became really wonderful because like it was a 4-day rigorous workshop to handle the elements. The primary focus is how to run e-classes, moderating e-classes. So that was a kind of prime focus, and I believe like many participants who participated benefited from this workshop. Next is, if you have any questions, then please you can raise. Trainings run by Nepal English Language Teachers Association. Sorry, I haven't incorporated all those initiatives which were familiar to me. I just let's say compile them here, and I'm showing them as examples. So if there are others, then yeah, you can highlight as well. You can drop in chat box, or you can share with me. So trainings run by Nepal English Language Teachers Association. It's not only centrally led programs or projects that NELTA had. Like NELTA's different chapters initiated differently. For example, from Bake, Nelta Bake, like, they first initiated this teacher training, and again, Bagmati, Nelta Bagmati, they initiated the other one. And right now, again, I can hear from some other Nelta branches, like, they are initiating this teacher training again. They are trying to initiate teacher training at their own regions too. Now see how it's multiplying, by the way, the effect is multiplying. So yeah, it's again possible. Okay, Gopal Puri has raised hand. So would you mind, may I request Suman sir to unmute Gopal Puri, and then probably he would like to share something. Or shall I unmute? Okay, Gopal Puri sir, would you like to speak? Yes.
Sorry, it is, yeah. Sorry, it is mistakenly, yeah, clicked.
That's fine, Gopal sir. Let me, in that case, okay,
Okay, sorry.
So Gopal Puri is from, if it is the same Gopal Puri, my
yeah,
friend.
you can go ahead. Yeah, you can go ahead. Sorry, I have no questions.
Okay, if it is the same Gopal Puri, like, who is from Sindhupalchuk Nelta, then let me highlight a little bit. Sindhupalchuk Nelta is also planning to run teacher training, even if they are ad hoc committees. See the kind of zeal or enthusiasm, and yeah, they happen to communicate with me, and they are also thinking of, designing some programs. See, I mean, how things are multiplying, like, so it's all due to, again, this crisis, always crisis, made us be a little bit critical. And then probably at that point, like, we happen to become a little bit, shall I call it proactive, so that, yeah, we happen to respond to the immediate situation with some innovative techniques. As a result, yeah, and then it can groom our own profession as well. Next, now, I don't want to, prolong it. Next is online conference organized by Scholars Association of Nepal. This particular conference itself, like, say, it's been possible. I remember how DNZ used to, talk with me at the very, I mean, in the very beginning regarding this particular, like, organizing some probably small scale sharing session and so on. But right now I can consider it as a, really rigorous online conference. And like in this picture itself, you can see to the left hand side, you can see the Baman Ghimire talking about MOOC, his MOOC journey, and then, yeah, lessons from high school in Nepal. And at the, let's say, to the right hand side of my screen, I can, see like Professor Balchandra Luitel, Professor Joshi, Pradeep Giri, Hari Lamsal, Manaprasad Wakle, from different areas, see, from really diverse areas, like, they are coming together, and then, yeah, they shared such an, really insightful, very much insightful and powerful remarks, which really inform our practices, or which have potential to inform our practices as well later. I'll refer later as well of Hari Lamsal sir, some words, and Manaprasad Wakle sir, some words as well. I mean, see, to be honest, like, to be honest, by reflecting, myself, it would not have been possible had we simply, thought of organizing in one physical space. Number one could be due to cost. Number two could be due to human resources. Number three could be due to the availability of time, of travel, of these all different scholars at the same place as well. And it's all been possible due to, online mode. And again, it's all been possible due to everyone is staying at home these days, and they have something, again, to share to the community. And it's all been possible, again, if we attribute to the Corona crisis situation, yeah, it's due to Corona crisis. Just highlighting the half-filled aspect of, the crisis rather than half-empty aspect of crisis. Next now, this is probably, you might be member as well. It will be really, I would like to encourage you, because, like, it will help you as well for your career. Teaching English in Large Classes Research and Teacher Development Network, TELPNet regular meeting. Harry Kucha, which in UK right now, Prem Phyak, Nepal, and Richard Smith. Yeah, there are other people as well. Primarily, these people are, organizing this meeting, regular meetings, and you can join. And they advertise this meeting in their Facebook page as well. You can join, searching this Teaching English in Large Classes Research and Teacher Development Network. And it's a kind of regular discussion going on. See, it's all been possible again through this, because of this Corona crisis situation. Now, okay, so theme-based discussion. See, all these different events have their own theme, and there are theme-based discussions. For example, like in the previous panel discussion, there were some issues like importance of education based on local model, which is really crucial at this point of time. Like education based on local model from our own local context. It's more a bottom-up kind of approach rather than top-down, having mandated curriculum. And it's been and we don't know the reality of, let's say, we don't know the reality of Kanchanpur, and the curriculum is created at somewhere again in the center, and the reality, the very generalized classroom, the very generalized curriculum doesn't represent the local context as well. So this issue was brought by Harilam Sal sir. Salute to Harilam Sal sir. Like education based on local model, which is really important right now. Such issue emerged, by the way, and I became really glad learning some remarks as such by some government officials like Harilam Sal sir. Need of studies to inform our current decisions and practices. It's what I think we need to advocate now. Or let's say all of us need to advocate. Need of studies, need of research to inform our current decisions and practices rather than based on some assumptions. And again, this was also highlighted by Harilam Sal sir. Definitely, there are many other people as well highlighting, but in that panel discussion. And such themes are, in some theme-based discussions, such issues are emerging, by the way, and which is really good enough. And see, it's all been possible at this point of time by, getting united with each other, and then, you're coming up with new ideas or coming up with something that's already existing, and then, bringing it to the fore, which is really good. Next opportunity is opportunity to devise our own context-sensitive strategies to deal with education during crisis situations. See, it's again, I think, the powerful point. All of us are working on our own context-sensitive strategies. Let me give the example of Puskar sir right now. Puskar sir shared in that panel, like only 50% students are, who is also right now one of the participants here. Puskar sir shared 50% students in his class are, participating in the online mode which they have designed or which he has designed, whereas others are left out. And his concern, his anxiety is how could he bring all, or is there any strategy, and so on, he asked. And see, now it's more like, he's focusing on his own context sensitive, aspect, and he's trying to seek the context sensitive, approach to solve his own problem. And there were some suggestions, like Monoprasad Wakle sir talked about four different modes of teaching and learning which can be possible. For example, one through postal system, like Bhanubhakta sir from Japan shared. Like in Japan, the practice is sending assignments through the post these days, which can be done in Nepal as well. I don't know. Again, we can see. We are not here to suggest, by the way. We're just exploring and unfolding the different stories. Next, second is, running courses from radio to reach out to those public, to reach out to those, learners, let's say, who are left behind. Third is through television, again, designing some interactive sessions and then, launching them through television and reaching out to the learners. Fourth is online mode. Now see, because we are at the distant learning phase right now, so we can decide, like, which mode is appropriate. It's not like one particular mode we need to stick with. Probably we can mix them together and we can go accordingly as well. And now again, the next thing is, if we are running online only, now we still need to be satisfied, because I think we still need to be satisfied because at the very, first, let's say, practice itself, we are having that much success, and probably asking them to share in a different way. I don't know, like, could be, if some learners who have submitted assignment and who belong to 50% category, if they can, go and travel to their own neighbors who are also the students, and probably making them share. I don't know, there can be different other ways. I mean, it's the time, this has brought the opportunity to devise or to, come up with our own very much context-driven, context-sensitive strategies. Earlier, we used to say, hey, okay, communicative language teaching and blah, blah, they are the methods, by the way. And yeah, but sometimes, our group work in blah, blah setting, and which doesn't perfectly fit as well, because in our classroom setting, it's really different. So yeah, like if I relate Yam Fusor's work, sometimes Western-driven approaches, so which does not fit at all, or which might not fit at all. Let me correct, not which does not fit, which might not fit at all, or which might fit only to some extent. See, so now we can remix, we can redesign our own activities with the help of the existing ones, or sometimes with some kind of innovative ones as well. So this is the opportunity. Next one is opportunity to focus on value education. Thank you, Samiksha Bidari ma'am. You highlighted quite a lot that day in the panel discussion on value education. I guess, if I'm not mistaken, you also said emotional education or humanistic education as well. Name can be given, yeah, as yourself mentioned as well. Yeah, name can be any, but we can focus at this point on value education, not focusing on entirely the content. For example, teaching grammar, teaching, if we are talking about English language teaching grammar, teaching, certain aspects, for example, vocabulary, or teaching skills and so on. Not only focusing on those things, we also can focus on value education. For example, yeah, some moral education. In the meantime, making them reflect on their own activities, or yeah, or kind of family literacy, which we'll talk later. So this is the opportunity. I mean, these are the opportunities that this Corona crisis situation has brought. If so, yeah, and this is what I had written as well in RT Brainstorm, which gets published from Ireland. Basically, that publishes the opinion pieces and some brief research work by the researchers working in Ireland. So the pandemic has highlighted the advantages and disadvantages of digital technologies to deliver classes and lectures. See, it has highlighted both advantages and disadvantages. Now we know the constraint of our own situation. See, now we know the limitations. Oh gosh, while planning for online mode, only 50% can get involved, not all. Oh, I need to see the other realities as well, how it could work. Now we have learned, like, what are the disadvantages of digital technologies as well, and what are the advantages of it while running Zoom. Oh, I happened to talk to one of the school's administrative person, and then he shared, like, oh, then he said, sir, we launched Zoom for all the classes, and then he talked about other classes as well. We launched Zoom for different classes, but to the junior classes like below 4, it didn't work. Now see, now they happen to learn, like, how synchronous communication tool can work for certain level, but not for all. And it's more from trial and error. Now, sometimes the choice or decision can be made by some kind of basic survey, like, Trio did, or sometimes can be, you just experience and you see it as well. So this pandemic has highlighted both the aspects, like advantages, what are the advantages, as I highlighted earlier, and some limitations or constraints as well, which we talk under affordances, like, the positive backs and potentials of the particular tools or, artifacts, and at the same time, some constraints too. So next now, this present context is a circumstance-driven opportunity for many of us to become familiar with different web tools, which we've been doing, I think, and which can be effective to run, courses online. So these are all the opportunities. Aside having some hurdles, now, has COVID-19, let's focus on our own profession. Aside having some hurdles, has COVID-19 crisis situation also brought some opportunities to you as a teacher, or as a person who you are, to you for your personal or professional development? Could you list them in Mentimeter? Either you can scan this QR code if you have QR code scanner in your application. If you have downloaded Mentimeter application, then you can use this code 94. Come on, yeah. 94. This one. Sorry, 948332 and submit. If you do not have application in your smartphone, then go to the www.menti.com and use the code 948332. Could you please do it? I'll give you 2 minutes time, to submit your answer again, to learn from you basically. So let me run the Mentimeter application now. And if you have any questions, are there any questions, Suman sir or Samiksha ma'am or Min sir?
No questions as such, other than a few, I think opinions and thoughts from a few teachers.
Okay, so, okay, thank you, Suman sir. Okay, the question is here. I've modified a little bit. Oh, despite some hurdles, let's go. Yeah, modified a little bit due to the characters limitation here. You have 1 minute and 49 seconds, so you can write very, 2 or 3 words or kind of phrase. You can go to either directly, you can go to www.menti.com and use the code. Or if you want to scan the QR code, then I can do that as well. So the QR code, yeah, if you want to see this QR code and scan, then you can do it, which will be quicker as well. And again, just to say, this Mentimeter application can be really good application to engage your learners in a form of, to make them discuss some issues more in a form of survey. And it's very easy. It's very straightforward. It's more like, running like any other web application. If you need code, then 948332. 11 people have answered. Sorry, 11 people have entered, but not answered, I guess. We have 8 seconds remaining. So the opportunity is to you for your personal and professional development. This countdown has begun, time's up. Let me see the 17 answers. Wow. So let's see, there's no correct answer. Yeah. So let's say, sure, meeting launch technology. Yep. Enhancement of digital competency, all connected to, if we create a theme-based analysis, we can see the focus on technology, like, digital competencies. Digital learning, very fast, proactive, and organized. Again, digital competencies. Online classes, again, digital competencies. ICT-based teaching initiative, again, digital competencies. Okay, so obviously has brought some chances, yeah. Act like a Superman during the time emergency, which is really, yeah, this is my kind of proactive decision. Family time, more sleep, online forum like Nailta, yep. Engaging in different online sessions, be familiar with technology, again, kind of more on technology, motivated to write reflection, yep. Wider network, okay, it's a networking, this is a new point. Online courses, opportunities, ideas about online, yep. Virtually, face-to-face and internet problem at times. Remote learning, okay. Family bonding, yes, again, this is a new point. Running online teaching, learning digital tools. So far we have seen the 3 different areas. So number 1, digital competencies. Number 2, networking. And number 3, kind of family bonding, family bond, or, probably valuing the family atmosphere, family ambience. So yeah, these are really good points. Thanks a lot for sharing your insights. 17 people share their opinion. It's really, yeah, let's see, like, what I have listed here then. It's 35. So I have still 25 minutes, right? I'm just double checking.
Yeah, you started at, I think, I've got a different time zone, so.
Okay.
Can't tell for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll track the time and then, yeah, okay. Professional pluses. See, I have called it professional pluses and 11:36. Okay. So first of all, it's networking. It has provided opportunity for us to network. Like, we are, for example, I as a person, I'm networking from here with different people across the world, like you are doing, as you said there as well. Building a wider community of practitioners. Yeah, we have been helped to build, very much wider community of practitioners at this point of time. And yeah, this community can help later as well. For example, contacting with those people if we get stuck on particular, let's say, running web application or so on. So this is again the different professional plus. Next is getting updated with current discourses and through discussions. Now see, as regards my own reflection as well, what I've found is by getting engaged in those panel discussions, I learned quite a lot, like, the political opinion of particular political person, different opinion by other participants as well, and then the expert's opinion too. So we get updated with current discourses through discussions. Opportunities to enhance digital competencies, as you mentioned, I don't need to describe them. So these are the professional pluses. Now, aside these professional pluses, there are some issues or concerns as well. What are they then? To me, the first issue is difficulty in working from home. It's really very difficult to work from home. Basically, if we have children, like I have a 4-year daughter here and I need to lock all the time, and not but like, physically locking, but asking her to, stay away from me. So it's very, very difficult to work from home, but still we are trying. See, there are opportunities, but there are some certain issues as well, which we need to deal often to, let's say, to gain those opportunities or to go closer to those opportunities as well. Mental well-being, which is, I don't see I don't see it's been much highlighted in Nepal's context, but mental well-being is equally important. At this point of time, like every one of us, like since we are staying for home for quite a long time, we don't find all the days equally good because of the different news stories or different kind of news that we happen to see in the let's say our social networking site, or hearing from others, or kind of always having the same mundane environment at home. So we are not, our mental well-being, it's not our mental thing is not stable. So we have to, this is the issue as well. How to address is again another layer of question which we need to unfold. Family literacy, which is really, really important. At this point of time, if we have kids and so on, have we thought of engaging them as well? Are we making them involved in reading and writing? Are we also reading or writing ourselves so that they will be influenced? How about thinking of this particular aspect? Or are we simply thinking like, are we simply talking with someone over phone for quite a long time, not taking care of those, children who are at home? What kind of treatment have to be done to our, own kids at home at this point of time, since they are always staying at home? So this literacy is equally important. We need to, I think like, next level of discussion should be done in family literacy as well. Next is lack of digital literacy in both learners and instructors. Yeah, we cannot say like we all have got, equal digital competence, always the extent. See, if you see the digital, I won't be, talking about digital competence today, but if you see, there are layers of, soft digital literacies, which are under how to communicate meaning effectively, how to source or, find information, in a right time, let's say in a right time with some kind of comfort zone, in being in comfort zone, or how can we portray ourselves in the digital world, and how can we participate and network in the digital world? How can we redesign the things so that we can address, or so that we can, we can achieve our own educational goals? So there are quite a lot of things using all the digital artifacts. So we have to focus. I mean, it's a lack of, there is a lack of, digital literacy. So this is another layer of issue. Probably by having survey and, working on, or let's say building a community of practitioners and working on their digital competencies can help, focusing on the particular type of digital literacy which they lack, could be. So this is another layer of, complexity again. Confusion owing to a very prompt shifting to run courses online. Yeah, there's a confusion like what to be done, which tool to be used. Can we use the Zoom can we use the Zoom as a synchronous communication tool, or can we use Google Meet, or can we use Easy Talk, or can we use any other? How about LMS? Do we use Edmodo or Google Classroom, because there are quite a lot of talk going on around the free tools, or can we use the locally produced LMS? Confusion, quite a lot of confusion, and this is one of the issues to be addressed. Limited technological infrastructures. See, we have to work right now. We have to work on this limited technological infrastructure. Our country, let's say our institution, it's not so much technologically advanced, and even the bandwidth itself, the internet bandwidth itself is a question. So on this particular aspect, again, we need to work. This is another issue. Access and equity. It's really interesting. Suman sir raised in one of my communications, and yeah, that became really insightful for me as well. Thanks a lot, Suman sir. And lately, Balchandra Luitel sir as well mentioned about access and equity. Yeah, we are thinking. Yeah, we are trying to reach out to quite a lot of students or learners, in online. And again, how about the equity? Do they have the good smartphones which can or good devices? Like, do all the students whom we are trying to reach to have all have good devices? Do they have got a good bandwidth to work? Otherwise, how about this equity kind of aspect? There can be access, but again, equity can be questioned. How about a person who is in far-flung area, who has got very limited bandwidth, and then how about a person who is having really good internet connection and who is in urban area, and we are giving same kind of assignment to both the students, and we are teaching distant mode? I guess it's the time to think of this issue as well, because like access and equity is equally the big issue here right now. Otherwise, if we can't reach online to those people, what could be the other different strategies, by the way? Will we relax the way we assess them? Or what could be the different strategies as a teacher? It can be a question. Need of critical discourses and proper planning at national and local level. This is the time now. So this current crisis period and post-crisis period could be a best time to have these critical discourses, and what can be the planning as well at the local level, which we can initiate, and at the national level, where which can be initiated by policymakers, or to the policymakers we can give some kind of input from our side. The role of learning technologies. Yeah, I focus on, in Nepal we hardly think of learning technologists. Learning technologists are those people who work on technology and pedagogy, who help teachers to use technology in their environment. So they are the learning technologists. So so how about the role of learning technologists? How about let's say again having a kind of community of learning technologists, because this is really, really important, and there has to be a dedicated team at this point of time to help. It should be at the government level or institutional level, or or can be at the very micro level, somewhere at the somewhere in a particular let's say I already talked of institution as well, somewhere in a small institution too. We have to think of this. See, the ecology of technology integration, actually this is the model which I'm proposing. The ecology of technology integration in education. There has to be a very broader interaction. For example, sometimes, let's say before this COVID crisis situation, like teachers used to, let's say, okay, teachers used to, teachers used to try some small actions, and there could have been only the involvement between teachers and students only in relation to use of technology in the classroom. And that was okay. That was at the very action level, and that's how things can go in a very micro setting. But at the macro level, see, there has to be a proper interaction between teachers, school managers as well. Now it's going on at this point of time. School managers, not only school managers, even the parents as well, they have to be brought into the activities that take place in the online environment or in the digital environment, so that they are pretty much aware of what's going on in the school. As a result, there can be a broader interaction between all these 4 primary stakeholders. Then this ecology can substantiate or help for the successful integration of technology in education. There are definitely something to influence, like curriculum, which is again in our case centrally mandated, limited infrastructure, and our own assessment policy as well, and our own digital competencies sometimes, like lack of digital competencies. But besides this, this had to be taken into considered, no doubt. Considering this fact, like we also need to make sure, how far we are communicating our ideas to school managers, parents. We need to think of it. So only after communicating what we've been doing at our level can be a broader activity, and which can lead for the successful integration of technology. Sometimes these parents are missed out. As a result, there's no successful integration. The reason is they're not informed of what's being done in the school. And this is the good time as well. So we need to think of this. I don't want to expand it further. Probably at one point of time, I'll be able to write about it and then, share it further. So post-COVID impact, support for the online teaching and learning at the university level. See, now the impact now, because universities are learning online teaching and learning, now there's a possibility for these, institutions to think of running the distance learning. I'm not distinguishing here between distance and online learning, because the practices right now we are having in Nepal is kind of a little bit blurred or fuzzy. I don't want to go deeper into it. So, I mean, let me say here, at the university level, there's a possibility to go, some universities can go the online, at the same time having even physical classes as well. They also can go for online teaching and learning. Second is, teachers have got some digital skills during pandemic, so there's a possibility to use digital technologies in education quite a lot. And again, because of the wider community of practitioners, we can always help each other, and that we can always encourage each other to use. And there's a possibility of, increment. There's a possibility of increment in use of digital technologies. Third point, continuous discourse on affordances of technology. Affordances is again a very complex concept, which I don't want to unfold. Simply, you can understand like action potentials of digital technologies, by the way. So affordances, like there can be educational or social affordances, technological affordances as well. Social affordances, does the particular web tool have some feature to make learners and teachers communicate with each other, or to build interaction? So we also need to consider what different affordances some certain artifacts or certain digital tools have, as a, let's say, if we are going to use. So there can be this discourse, for example, the potentials of them and challenges of them as well. So there can be continuous discourse on the affordances of technologies. And yes, now we are aware of potentials and challenges of using digital tools in our own setting, in our own context. Now see, when we talk about challenges, like this is, I don't want to again deal much. Otmar, Otmar from 1999, she's a professor in the US. She describes barriers, challenges of using technology as first order or second order. Simply by first order, these are the infrastructure related challenges, lack of infrastructure. Second order, which are internal to teachers. That means attitude of a teacher, confidence of a teacher, or efficacy of a teacher, ability of a teacher to use. So sometimes we have a trend of focusing on only first order barriers, trying to mitigate the first order barrier. But equally, the confidence of teachers, attitude of teacher, or let's say the efficacy, ability of teachers can equally play the role as well. So we need to focus on both. It's good to focus. Some people have described like material conditions and non-material conditions. Some have described like Bekta has described like school level barriers and teacher level barriers. And again, these people, Balancard, Blamir, and Kefala, they have described as school level, teacher level, and system level barriers. They have classified barriers in different ways, like UN Brush, lack of school resources and institution. And he has also introduced subject culture as a different barrier. So people have defined different barriers. Barriers related to using technology in the classroom in a different way. So I would like to take the kind of comprehensive description, comprehensive kind of classification of barriers by these people, Balancard, Blamir, and Kefala in the ICT Impact Review. Teacher level barrier, they have said lack of teacher ICT skills, lack of teacher confidence, lack of pedagogical teacher training, lack of follow-up of new ICT skills, and lack of differentiated training programs. By differentiated training programs, like, do we have the training programs that particularly targets building some let's say some particular teachers, abilities or some needs. So if we have that differentiated training programs, then yeah, that can help, addressing the particular teacher's needs. So, and there's also the school level factors like, absence of ICT infrastructure, old and poorly maintained hardware, and blah, blah. I don't want to read them all. And system level factors, rigid structure of traditional education system, traditional assessment, restrictive curricula, restricted organizational structure. Now, if we see, now, same kind of barriers do exist in Nepal as well. Lately, Suman Lodari, sir, Dr. Suman Lodari has, conducted research on barriers in the higher education, integrating technology in higher education setting. So there's a need to, explore what exactly are the barriers in using technology in school level, or let's say in education as well. So we need to unfold that. Now, why we're talking about this is like, there's a need. So we also can think as a post-COVID, step. Now, see, teacher level factors and school level factors. I think sometimes we can address teacher level factors. We can address, like, we've been trying to build our own confidence, build our own digital competence, and so on. But yeah, system level factors, which we might not control as well. So probably we need to focus on what we can control at this point of time, rather than, what we cannot control. And through the rigorous discussion and through the rigorous, discourse, we can provide some input to those people who are working on the system level, who are working at the system level as well, or who can mitigate the system level barriers, or who can help mitigate the system level barriers. Points to note: digital literacy is not only assist in managing online courses, but it will also assist concerned people manage their day-to-day living. See, having digital literacies right now. So it's good to promote digital literacies in our learners right now, because it also helps in the day-to-day living. For example, any kind of online transaction which they do, if we talk about the financial thing and so on, just an example. Having run online courses, we can continue our academic activities even during any crisis period, for example, which we might have later due to the political strike and so on. At a time, learners again will be, engaging in some very relevant activities rather than, rather than engaging in some potential irrelevant activities. For example, going out and pelting stones, or doing something. Rather, once there is bundle kind of thing, or there will be some kind of crisis again, which might be due to our own political, structure, it will help to continue our own academic activities then. But please remember, always pedagogy before technology. Technology is just the means to, deliver content and make more engaging, if you would like to put that way. Otherwise, always pedagogy before technology. Things to consider while conducting online classes: you need to examine the digital literacies of both the learners and parents, even the parents as well, if you are thinking of a school level, because parents need to support them. If learners at higher, if at higher education you are thinking of, then of learners, we need to think of that. Teachers also need to have acquired all necessary digital competencies to conduct online classes. Do we have all kind of, digital literacies which are required? We need to think of that. Yeah, then we need to think of nature and appropriate time to provide feedback to the learners. Feedback is really important. If you are running online classes right now, and if you don't provide feedback on time, probably there won't be proper engagement as well. Next, teachers who run online courses need to be aware of both the thing, potentials and challenges. What are the challenges? If you know the challenges, then you can mitigate the challenges as well. Sometimes what might happen is, right, because we are so overwhelmed with so many tools right now, and we might think of using all those tools later when we have physical classes. And because we are trying to overuse the things, or let's say because we are using things in such a way which might burden the students as well, and there might be disengagement as well. So we also need to think of this point. Access and equity is the next, which we discussed amply earlier. So these are the references, like, if you want to read further, probably they would help you. And further, these are the references from your own writing. That's it. And your comments and questions, please, if you have right now. We have some time, I guess. I would stop the screen sharing then, and you can raise your hand or, sorry, what's wrong? Oh yeah, come on, you, okay. Sorry, what I did, stop sharing, okay. Yes, if you have comments or questions, then yeah, you are welcome. Please,
There are no any questions as such in the chat, but a couple points that I would like to make about what you said. I think just to help think participants, and I think that might stimulate further discussion. I think access and equity is a serious issue. I mean, you mentioned of remote areas, people not having access. Earlier, I think it was Mindawadi sir who said he only had around 50% attendance in higher education, especially in 11, 12. So what I would like to request all colleagues to think is, I think access and equity also comes to a context, I mean, like, to a context like that of Mindawari sir, where 50% of students don't come online. So how do you ensure that, the rest of the 50% of the students, have access to the resources that you share or the content that you teach? So that's one thing that I would like, everyone to consider. And maybe, think, what are your strategies? Maybe if you have points, or if you have strategies that you've implemented, we'd love to hear both, I think, Sagun sir, me, and all other colleagues. The other point I think also Pitambar sir mentioned in the chat was that, second order barriers related to your attitude. So, barriers related to your attitude, especially as a teacher, is he said is more important, and was in his research he found it to be, I think, more noticeable. So it's from my research, from my practice here, and also I think from my observation, I think second order barrier or teacher's attitude is very, very important. Your attitude as a teacher, and your perceptions about teaching and learning, your perceptions and beliefs about technology in education, your perceptions and beliefs about teaching and students. I think all of these math factors play a big role in whether and how and when you use technology. And I think those are the points that I would like you to actually consider, and maybe ask us questions.
Yeah, I guess there's a question from Kumar Subedi sir.
Yeah.
How about teaching with lower level students who can't properly handle the technology? This is a very good point. Since we don't have much time, I'll just try to, hit the bullseye. I'm not here to, suggest, but through my experience and through my understanding, I would say, like, for junior schools, trying to reach out to them through synchronous communication can be, I wouldn't say blunder, but it can't be a proper means, by the way. Probably, at this point of time, if we have email addresses of parents, sending them, sending some, package through parents, but again with a note. For example, my daughter is in Irish school here, and we have been getting some, package of assignments from her, but at the same time from her teacher. And there's a kind of very light note. Don't feel pressurized to make your sons or daughters do these assignments. And these are only the kind of, these are the things that we have designed in a general way. But feel free, like, you can also choose some and use, or you also can, feel free to, use your own as well. So this is a kind of, very soft note, or very kind of, definitely the polite note at the same time, and some kind of, flexible note that they have mentioned. So probably this is one of the strategies. And let me also refer to Bhanubhakta sir's idea, like in Japan, like through the postal system, like, they had been, doing their postal, the assignments have been sent from the post as well. Now, again, we'll question how far, to what extent our post is, reliable. So this other layer. So I think we need to generate ourselves, reflecting on our own context where we are. And, realizing our own potential. I would like to answer this way rather than giving a concrete answer, because I'm not in a position to give a concrete answer.
We have one more question after, Kumar Subedi sir's question. We have question from Pushparaj Paudil sir. His question is, how can we maintain balance between access and equity?
Very much good and powerful question. Access, and I think first of all, we need to work for access more than equity at this point of time. Then slowly, but at the same time, because we are teacher educators or teachers, we need to think of equity as well, and slowly working towards the equity too. But again, now if you say how question comes, I think how question will rely on your own practices in our own reflection as well. What is our context? Who are our learners? Like, what strategies have we followed as of now? What potential strategies are we trying to follow in future? So I mean, the equity kind of things will all depend on our own these layers of questions. So if we unfold this, then probably we'll find some strategies as well.
Just wanted to add something, that the other day Amina ma'am also mentioned, and this has something I've observed. I think we already have a lot of issues around equity, and the move to online or remote teaching has added a layer, a new layer to that complex social issue. So I think as Sagun sir just mentioned, we need to have, I think, very much contextualized strategy because every school is different, where Pushpa sir teaches and where Mindawadi sir teaches. I mean, just for an example, your two schools are completely different from each other. So I think you need to have that institutionally devised policy. Sagun sir, could I maybe, when you answered Kumar Subedi's question about, teaching remotely using online in basic level, I think you would be able to relate to this because your daughter goes to an Irish school. My daughter goes to a school here in Sydney, and both of our daughters are of almost same age, and they are in kindy. So, what we do is the schools clearly advise that, okay, there are I mean, at least for my daughter, they have daily activities on, in Google Classroom. And not that my daughter can log into Google Classroom. So, a lot of that onus of that responsibility of getting your daughter online or getting your kid to online comes to parents. So the, parents now, Kumar sir, I think, in our case, to answer your question, parents' dedication, parents' digital competencies, digital literacy, I wouldn't say digital competencies, parents' digital literacies, and access again, internet, mobile devices. So all of these things will matter. And I think you need to consider what I think it was Pushkar Chaudhary sir, what Pushkar Chaudhary sir, and his school did, carrying out that survey. I think that will help us maybe devise a good plan. We have a question from Manoj Raj Bhatta sir. Yeah.
Sorry, Suman sir. Thanks a lot for adding. There are so many, I mean, very much interesting questions. 3 questions I can see of Kamal Raj Dahal, Reach to Teach Nepal, and Damar Singh South.
We have a question from Rajdeep Pandit before we move down. So his question, Rajdeep Pandit sir, maybe a rhetorical question. Isn't there other means except technology? We've been observing many challenges. So why are we only thinking about technology? So I think it's a rhetorical question. I wouldn't ask you to answer it, but then I think Rajdeep Pandit sir, we'd love to hear if you have any ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, as we told earlier as well, and then it has been answered to some extent by Reach to Teach Nepal, Reach to Teach Nepal as well. Like, online means can be only one means, and at this point of time, because we are at the distant mode, it is one of the, let's say, much preferred, or let's say kind of because it's been, through the pressure as well, like, because we don't have other modes, so we're just trying to adopt this mode. Otherwise, there can be other approaches as well, which should be, again, context appropriate, which fits to your own local context rather than, someone suggesting on you to work this way. What we need to think of, we need to redesigning, remixing, or let's say redesigning, I mean, like, let's not think of a particular theory or particular, methodology that which we have read works perfectly. we can devise our own context-sensitive strategies as well ourselves. And in that case, we are the propounder, so we don't need to worry. So yeah, I mean, I focus on that rather than giving a kind of very concrete suggestion like online teaching or learning should work at this particular point or blah blah. No, because every context is different, and we need to acknowledge the contextual constraints to really make our teaching learning effective. That's it.
The other question is, how is it possible to run online classes without adequate infrastructure, access to free internet facility to students who are maybe economically marginalized, and proper training to maybe teachers and students? So what is your take on this? I think we've had a long discussion on this the other night.
Sorry, I was reading Gita about Troy's question, which just drew my attention. Okay. I couldn't concentrate.
Right. So the question is, if like students don't have access to technology and teachers don't have access to training and there is no adequate infrastructure, so how can you run, classes online, or how can you teach remotely? You remember we've had a discussion on this the other night. So maybe you can, if you want me to, I can,
Yeah, please carry on. Like, I'll add later.
Yeah, I think it might be this morning that I was reading somewhere that this home television has started, CSEE preparation classes, and I think in some other local areas, for example, I think it's in Kawasaki, one of our colleagues, senior colleagues, he started teaching English, mathematics, and other subjects through a local radio and local television. So if there aren't enough adequate or enough, infrastructure, especially internet, maybe, making use of those resources might be a good strategy. Again, you need to devise plan at the institutional level. Anything to add, Sagun sir?
Before adding, shall I unmute? Sorry, if you prefer to, speak, Reach to Teach Nepal, I don't know. Could you talk about probably, the idea from Reach to Teach Nepal can be really interesting to address these queries as well. Because,
okay, let me unmute him. Yeah.
He or she had shared, like, cannot be nomadic education where there is not access of the internet. Could you please elaborate a little bit, because it's new to me, and it might be a good suggestion for our friends as well.
I can't. Okay, so yep.
Hello.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Please carry on.
Hello. This is me, representative from Race to Teach Nepal, and I'm advocating like remote learning in this situation after lockdown, and many students are out of schools. About 80% students are out of schools, and they don't have any facilities like internet and laptop. So I have been encouraging them after lockdown to follow some nomadic education like grazing animals and like stitching some bamboo baskets or something else like that. And that is also another interesting skills, dexterous skills they developed in that way in a remote area, and engaging in household chores. So that this is also a kind of education system, and that help them to boost themselves in their area. So if this online education is only for elite family, only who are living in cities, and that basically focus on only them, we're only focusing to the only 20% people. We're not talking about 80% people, and this is a concern, and it has been debated for a long time with the ministry of like some people who are working in this sector. So I have been questioning in different in principal groups and somewhere else, and I'm targeting them, and they're also making target to me because of give me some solution for that. And I just give them today some ideas, and they appreciated my idea regarding this type of things. Then I told them nomadic educations like traditional skills, making like plow, like hollow, jua, something else like that. And this is also very important skills we have to impart them, so that their skills also polish themselves.
Thank you, sir, for sharing the value of nomadic education. Actually, the term is very much new to me. But yes, the kind of skill-oriented education in those communities where online education or the typical education access like we are thinking of, which is, let's say, kind of mainstream education, has not been available or accessible to them. Thank you. Yeah, we also can think of them. But if we are talking of, sorry, a little bit, trying to connect to what our other participants have also raised the question. So if we are talking of, again, the mainstream education, and then talking of the integrating technology in the education or going through online more, in that case, please again check your context, understand your, explore your context, and if there is no possibility of online education, don't advocate for this, because it's if there is no technological support, for example, if there is no technological infrastructure, if there is no let's say if there isn't enough digital competencies in learners to handle first, then it's not worth of going for that as well. Rather, we need to sort some other alternatives. For example, other alternatives can be, yeah, as Suman sir also mentioned earlier, or let's say Bhanuvakta sir mentioned earlier, like through the letters, or or making them, I don't know how it can be done, because I'm not here, particularly I'm not in a position to suggest, because this is, you are the experts of your own context. Please do acknowledge, and your learners are the experts of their own context as well. Communicating with you and the communication between you and your learners particularly, and again taking care of your institutional system, that can devise the best strategy that works for you, rather than anything as such. That's my point. So Ramesh Ji has, okay, I can't follow the chat. I have a question. Hiranal Kapar sir has said, I have a question. Do we have time, by the way? Otherwise, yeah. Hello. Anyone, like, Samiksha ji or Suman sir or Minji, or, do we have time to take some questions?
Yeah, I think we can take some 1 or 2 questions.
Okay,
if you're okay.
So, oh yeah, I'm okay. As long as we have time, I'm okay, but I don't want to, So could you unmute, please, yeah, there's Hiralal Kapoor, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably he has interesting idea.
Unmute.
Okay, thank you very much, Sagun sir, for your wonderful presentation. I have been working on writing pedagogy, and I asked interview. I gave interview.
So sorry, Hiralal sir, your voice is fluctuating. Could you please speak close to your microphone, and probably it will be audible to all of us. Yeah.
I have been working on writing a paper on COVID pandemic.
Carry on, please.
And most of my participants have issues of satisfaction.
Yeah, sir. Sorry to interrupt you in between, because your voice is, sorry, I guess it's to everyone as well, your voice is fluctuating. So could you please, write in a chat box, and then if that is feasible for you, so that, yeah, we'll be able to take some questions from others. The reason is we can't hear you properly right now.
Sagun sir?
Yeah.
May I interrupt you?
Please carry on, yeah.
Actually, our time is about to be over. I think, so let's take the final question, or let Samiksha thank you, or we'll be again doing these all things, because it will go for 4 hours, I know, or 5 hours.
Please, it's you, the host decision. Yeah, please, yeah, feel free to decide.
What do you say, participants? What do you think? Anyone has any big issue that you have to ask there, please, you just go on asking. Otherwise, I know it will take nearly 4 or 5 hours also, because it's an interesting talk. We all are here, to learn. Anyone has any query like that? Okay, Samiksha, over to you.
Better to sum up now, sir.
Yes, Samiksha.
Yes, sir. Better to sum up.
Okay, sure. So, good evening again. Thank you, Mr. Sagun, for a very fascinating and highly engaging session. I was thrilled to hear how much has been done during this COVID and also about the future possibilities. I'm sure everyone now here has far more understanding of technological challenges and opportunities in education. Thank you again for sharing your insights. I would also like to thank our program coordinator, Mr. D.N. Joshi, our host, our co-host, and all the participants present here with us this afternoon till evening. Last but not the least, my heartfelt thanks also goes out to Scholar Association of Nepal for this amazing opportunity, allowing us to share intellectual knowledge using this virtual platform. Thank you all.
Thank you, Samik.
Thank you, Dian sir. Yeah, bye for my session. I mean, but I'll be joining the next session as well. So
thank you, sir. And I would like to just say that the Scholars Association of Nepal will be awarding you with the speaker certificate electronically very soon. And this has been, sponsored by Nelta Baki.
Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks to the co-host as well, those who helped today, Suman sir, Samik Sadji, Min sir, and you as well, and all the participants. Because of you, we have been able to explore quite a lot of issues again, getting across different areas in relation to what we talked today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And I would also like to welcome Phyak sir, even if I'm not host right now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you all the participants for having the interactive session with Sagun sir. And now we are going to move on second session. The second session will be by Dr. Prem Phyak. I think Trilok sir, are you there? Trilok sir? Suman sir,
he is muted, sir.
Trilok Tiwari is there? No? Okay. Yes, he is there, sir.
Yes, sir. Hello,
yes,
dear sir. Yes,
please,
sir, I'm here.
On behalf of Scholars Association,
Can you hear me?
I would like to welcome Prem Phyak, sir. And now to introduce Dr. Phyak, I would like to request the Assistant Professor of Harveston University, Trilok Tiwari, sir. Over to you, Trilok, sir. Trilok, sir, yes. Is he muted or unmuted, sir?
He is unmuted.
Okay, Trilok, sir. Trilok, sir.
Thank you, Dian, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, Dian, sir. You're doing a great job during this pandemic by connecting the intellectuals from home and abroad to the same screen. Has Prem sir come?
Yes.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to this wonderful and beautiful virtual session. I'm very pleased to be here today for introducing Dr. Prem Phyak to the conference. Well, Dr. Phyak is an associate professor at the Tiruvon University. He has pursued his MA TESOL from the Institute of Education, University College London, UK, and PhD in Second Language Studies from the University of Hawaii, USA. He has also done a graduate certificate in Disaster Management and Humanitarian Assistance from the University of Hawaii. He has been awarded with scholarships such as University of London Centenary Scholarship, East-West Center Great Degree Fellowship, and Open Society Foundation Scholarship. Dr. Phak's research areas include language policy, multilingualism, and multimodality across species. Specialty. He has co-authored a book, Engaged Language Policy and Practices, with Kathy Davidge, that has been published by Routledge Publication. His publications have appeared in Inquiry in Language Studies, Current Issues in Language Planning, and L2 Journal. through his research, teaching, and community engagement, Phyak mentors, launches, and advocates for social information. He also writes in various newspapers. In his free time, loves photography. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Phyak to facilitate the.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Trilokji, for this wonderful, very kind introduction. And thank you, Scholars Association or Society. It's Scholar Society and DNG and colleagues. Good afternoon from Nepal. I don't know where you are attending this conference. So thank you for having me. I know you have been attending this this talk today from 3, yes, Sagunji. I'm sure you must be exhausted, but I will not be talking. Yeah, that is what every speaker says. I will not be talking for long, but I will try to conclude in 45 minutes. And I actually love question answers a lot. And this is my, I think, third webinar of the day. So I started from 7 and the first 1 p.m., second, and this one is the third webinar. And it's very wonderful to see all faces smiling, and which is very important during pandemic, and it is very therapeutic. And I hope you and your loved ones are fine and doing okay. So, and everybody is safe. So my topic, okay, let me share my slides first. So, okay. Is it there? No, not yet. Okay, can you, can you enable screen sharing for me? So who is the host?
Sagun sir or Suman sir? Suman sir?
You are the host now, so you can do it, or I can do it. Okay.
Okay.
It is. Okay, thank you. Now it's fine. Okay, so as you see on the screen, is it okay? Can you all see my slides? Hello, Sagunji?
Yes,
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I was just checking in. So the topic that I will be talking about today is a language policy, and basically I will be looking at 3 different areas of language policy. So one is looking at the theory and research, and mostly my talk is more research oriented, and I would just like to share some of the findings, some of the research areas in language policies, and I will be focusing on the implications for research. So what are the implications of language policy research in education? So as you see at the end of my name, there is my Twitter. So if you have any questions, so I'm kind of active on Twitter than Facebook. So you can always ask question as well. So the outline of my talk. So basically, what is language policy? You know, it's been I forgot the day, because in this pandemic, I don't know how you feel, but I'm forgetting the days. I don't know whether it is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Every day is just a day. So days are gone, the times are gone. So we had a panel discussion. I don't know which day, but before. And we had an issue on dealing with language policy. So I'll be discussing what is language policy first briefly. and looking at more a little bit of history and components and different aspects of language policy and different perspective, and also look at the theories and approaches to language policy research, basically. And also I will briefly highlight what are the scopes and areas of language policy research, those who are actually interested in doing research in language policy. You don't have to be a researcher like doing PhD or doing masters. As a teacher, you can do a number of interesting language policy research as well. And as an educator, you can do a number of language policy research. And finally, I will deal with implications and possibilities in education. And I will take some questions. So, and my talk is based on this book, which was published in 4 years before. So it's called Engage Language Policy and Practices. We haven't been able to follow up with this work, but I'm trying to do something. But my talk is based on this book. If you had some chance to read this book, so many things would not be really new for you. So let me begin with this this very simple question, but very difficult to answer. So what is language policy? Language policy means different things for different people across time, space, and communities. So for example, for policymakers who represent government, they think policy as a text and policy as constitution. For lawmakers, policy is constitution. For Ministry of Education, the policy is something that is written in Education Act. For general citizens like us, the policy could be, language policy could be something, again, that is constitution. But it is not always like that. So it could be very different in different times, in different space, and different communities. So different people have different perspective, different communities have different perspective. And it depends on, the institution, spaces as well. For example, language policy in a courtroom is different from language policy in family. Language policy in school could be very different from language policy in cyberspace like internet, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. So it could be very different things, but I will just begin with very simple definition of language policy. It began with this Hagen's idea of language planning first in 1959 and later elaborated in 1966. So Hagen defines language planning as any activity of preparing normative orthography, grammar, dictionary for the guidance of writers, speakers in a non-homogeneous speech community. See that it's more about, initially, the whole field of language policy began as more like linguists activity, so preparing corpus like orthography, grammar, and dictionary. And looking at more like non-homogeneous speech community, not necessarily looking at more multilingual setting. So this is very classical, beginning of language policy. But now there is a shift from this traditional definition of language policy, and people have started looking at language policy as a more socio-cultural process. For example, this Terry McCarthy defines language policy as a complex socio-cultural process and as modes of human interactions, negotiation, and production mediated by relations of power. So I have highlighted, like you can see that it's more human interaction now. There is a negotiation. There is a production, and which is mediated by relations of power. So it's like language policy is all about the relations of power. And the policy in this process resides in their language regulating power, and that is the ways in which they express normative claims about legitimate and illegitimate language forms and uses, thereby governing language status and the uses. So basically 3 things here. So language policy is more human interaction, and it is implicated, it is mediated by relations of power relations. and it includes normative claims, so which legitimizes some languages and illegitimizes other languages. So that's why it's more like governing language practices, which language is legitimate and which language is illegitimate. So and language policy is often defined as kind of like, I really like this definition. So my favorite one, it was a little bit dated, but Herbert Christ in 1991 defines language policy as every public influence on the communication radius of languages, the sum of those, the top-down and bottom-up political initiatives through which a particular language or languages is or are supported in their public validity, their functionality, and their dissemination. Like all policies, it is subject to conflict and must regularly be reordered through constant discussions and debate. So I call this definition as like tension-filled, language policy as a tension-filled phenomenon. So it can be top-down, it can be bottom-up, and then functionality of languages are governed and supported or sometimes not supported. And most importantly, it involves, tensions and conflict, and through which the languages are reordered and in public debate. So it's more like language policy is not always linear. It's kind of like tension-filled phenomenon, and you can see in the case of Nepal as well. So the choice of language, and there is always debate, and which language should be used in school, which language should be used in public spaces, it's something like that. So it's tension-filled. So to borrow the word of Bakhtin. I don't know why my slides are not really moving fast. Now let's talk about these components of language policy. Bernard Spolsky, so I have, there is you can see the book. So Bernard Spolsky wrote a book in 2004. And this is very important for the researchers who are interested in language policy, language education policy. So what are the concrete manifestations? What are the different components of language policies? So he says, he highlights 3 components of language policies. The first is more like language management, which is traditionally known as language policy. Which includes like deliberate intervention, like from the government, governing agencies, legislations like constitution, and it could be, the legislation could be sometimes written and sometimes unwritten. So how you manage different languages. But that's not enough. So that is how we have defined language policy. But there are two other components of language policy. So one is the language ideology. So basically, there are a different definitions of language ideologies by different sociolinguists, critical applied linguists, linguistic anthropologists. There are a number of definitions, but simply language ideologies refer to assumptions and beliefs and attitude about language and language use. So how do you perceive the use of particular language? Are they good? Are they bad? What is your judgment towards the use of language? There's some kind of like justification and rationality towards the use of language. That's language ideologies, and language ideologies are always socio-cultural. So where you come from determines what values and what rationality that you bring for a particular language. And most importantly, there is another component of language policy, which is language practices. So what are the different varieties of languages used in community, in different spaces, in schools, in public spaces, in government offices? It could be formal and informal use of language. It could be standard and non-standard. It could be dialect, standard and non-standard dialect. So different practices of the language. So whether people use it as a homogeneous entity or whether they mix languages. So how languages are being practiced. So in everyday life, for example, in school, so what languages are used? In family, what languages are used? How these languages are used? So that's why if you are doing language policy research, it's very important to look at these three different components. So language management, not just language management, not just constitution and rules and regulations, but also looking at the language ideologies and assumptions and beliefs, and also look at what are the language practices on the ground. Sagunji, who is host? So it is not, my slides are not moving.
The slides are visible here.
Yeah, but I wanted to change the slides, but it's not moving. So it's not going,
okay. Sagunji, can you make from there?
Yeah, I'm trying to check, but we have only the screen sharing option and Phyak is screen sharing. So I don't know. Could you please just restart most probably, I mean slides, like, you know.
Oh, okay.
Skip the slides. And, yeah.
Yeah, I got it. So now I don't think that the slideshow is working because I have some heavy slides as well. Okay, I think it's okay. So so that's why language policy for Bernard Spolsky is you know, all the language practices, beliefs, and management decisions of a community or a polity. So it's just like overarching. So language policy includes practices and ideologies and even management efforts. So in sum, let me conclude what is language policy first. This is something that I want to be a little bit of crazy here. So language policy is not always explicit. It could be implicit as well, if you look at there. So it could be written and unwritten. So as long as there is some normative claims, why people are claiming the use of this language and use of or not use of that language. So if it is, it could be explicit or it could be implicit. It could be written or it could be unwritten. Language policy is ideological. It is not value free. It has some implications, socio-political implications. And it is socio-political, and it is always mediated by power relations. So meaning that some languages entertain prestige, some languages do not. And whose languages are mostly not really legitimized in spaces, across spaces, schools and public spaces. Mostly the people who speak non-standard varieties and the people who come from low socioeconomic background and something like that. So that there is power relations always. And you know, language, there is a you know, strong beliefs that language policy impacts on the citizen's life. It impacts the life of the lives of children. It impacts the lives of parents and all citizens in one way, in one or other ways. So sometimes, like in case of language policy in education, it may marginalize some children to learn. It may empower some children. For example, if policies are not multilingual, then if policies are monolingual, so the native speakers of that language are more empowered and they get advantage. So it impacts on the lives of people in their identities, in their ways of communication, in their sense of belonging. So there is always impacts. So it's very interesting to look at the impacts, how particular language policy impacts on the life of people. And you know, language policy could be imposed sometimes, and it could be resisted as well. It's not true that, you know, always, you know, language policies are, you know, accepted as it is. So it is resisted, and sometimes it is negotiated. Some aspects of language policies are accepted and some are not. So very interesting to look at these policies. Look at the English medium of instruction policies in Nepal, for example. Not only in Nepal, even in South Asia and other parts of the world. It is not always explicit resistance. So it could be implicit resistance and resisting by action, resisting by behavior, rather than, you know, participating in explicit activism. So it's very important to look at how different actors resist language policy. Now, with this, with this very overview, general overview of what language policy is, now let me go back to a little bit of this historical overview. You may be aware of this fact, language policy, the whole field of language policy in applied linguistics, particularly in our field, began with this this notion of nation state. So in 1950s and 60s, so there was a whole there was a political movement going on. So and every nations were becoming independent, and then there was an era of decolonization. So they were freeing themselves from these previous colonizers. And then there was a whole discourse of nationalism, emerging. So our nation, one nation should have one language as an official language, something like that. So, and there was a debate which language should be official language and how languages should be promoted. And in 1950s and 60s, the whole notion of language planning emerged and basically focused on planning, like corpus planning, developing dictionaries as Hagen has already defined. Then it was more like, focus on decolonization and mostly nationalism. So one language, one nation should have at least one official language, which is not their, the language of colonizers, something like that. Then in 1970s and 80s, this language policy became a little bit popular and focused on solving language issues in multilingual context. Now, not just monolingualism works, so it doesn't in multilingual context. So how to solve language problems? And now the shift was more on status planning and acquisition planning. So status planning is giving status to different languages, and acquisition is more concerned with teaching and learning of the language. And also focus on societal hierarchies of the language, how languages are hierarchized, how hierarchies are created. And in 1990s, what happened was language policy became more popular because people started critiquing, for example, people started critiquing language policies, official language policies, as they were perpetuating inequalities. For example, English language teaching, or using English as a medium of instruction, or using one national language as a medium of instruction. So people like Robert Phillipson, you can see people like Alistair Pennycook, and they came up with the idea that, and even the people like Jim Tollefson, they came up with the idea that language policies are actually, creating inequalities, reproducing social inequalities. And there was a criticism that, language policy was erasing minoritized. I don't use minority by purpose, I use minoritized because it's more political thing. No language is minority in itself, so it's minoritized. So, and indigenous languages from public sphere. So how the visibility of languages, indigenous and minority languages were erased. And also there was critique on the emergence of language, sorry, it's not activities, it's language activism. I'm sorry about that. So there was a certain, there was emergence of, this language activism in the field of language policy. And this critical perspective move on, and in late 1990s, they started bringing up different perspective. Now see that the critique doesn't work always. It's true that there are inequalities and language policies are mediated through power relation, that's fine. But how about the transformation thing? How about how people actually struggle to resist? How about people creating their language policies themselves? And they started focusing on actors. So for example, teachers, for example, community members, not necessarily looking at the constitution, and how people are doing themselves. And the creations, negotiation, appropriation, and transformation of language policies. And mostly again, this more, further development of language activism in the literature. So it could be really interesting. So I will be talking about this thing a little bit later. And now in 2000, so we are in 2000, and we are focusing more on this public sphere approach. So this term comes from Jürgen Habermas, if you are familiar with. So who talks about public sphere as public space. So where, you know, your discourse and your communication, the way you communicate, you create discourse, impacts the life of people, and it is more ideological. So now this the whole scope of language policy is expanding. It is not only in the school. Now it is not only in you know, it is not only related to constitution and government offices. So now look at the cyber spaces, you know, internet websites, what languages are used. Look at the signboards outside, you know, what languages are used. So these things are coming up. And most importantly, now the shift of language policy research is moving towards more bottom-up perspective, not necessarily looking at just what government has said and what is the implementation of that policy, but looking at more how people are, what people are doing, how those language policies are impacting. So I would just like, you know, maybe some of you are aware of this. In 1960s, like East West Center in Hawaii. So the scholars like Joshua Fishman and John Robbins and John Gernot and even Charles Ferguson. So they came together and they put this book. And two different books, two different publications are very important. So Language Problems of Developing Nation, which was published in 1968. And Can Languages Be Planned? Sociolinguistic Theories and Practices for Developing Nations. So these two publications are actually, you know, foundations for the field of language policy. So with this, if you are not familiar with, so yeah, you can read this book. So by Francis Holt and David Johnson, wrote a book in 2015, and they call it Research Matters in Language Policy and Planning, a Practical Guide. It's very, very interesting book. So I would just like to highlight what are the expanding spaces of language policies. Then, you know, space, so it's like scopes, the particular space, the defined space. So what are those spaces? For example, most of us are familiar, most of us discuss language policy in terms of more schools and universities setting only, mostly schools in case of Nepal. But there is little studies on language policy in universities. So what languages are used and what languages are imposed or sometimes negotiated for students? Can students speak English in university classes? Can students write their term papers in Nepali or in the language they are comfortable with? So this is the thing that language, I mean, we haven't actually looked at, and how do students feel about that? And for example, there are different topics that we could be looking at. For example, if you are interested in schools and university policies, for example, medium of instruction and communications, you know, sometimes knowingly or unknowingly, the teachers are saying that, okay, don't speak Nepali or don't speak your mother tongue, speak English only. So what does it mean for those kids? And also looking at multilingual education a lot in schools. So how different languages, more than one mother tongue, in addition to Nepali, could be used as a pedagogical resource. So it could be interesting area. And also looking at pedagogy and tests. So how teachers use multiple languages or just one language to teach multilingual children. How does it help, or how doesn't it help? So there are, and one interesting area could be, you know, in Nepal, so there is no research on, I should say, there is no research on language policy and on testing. So tests could work as language policy tool, you know, because, you know, you have to use one language, but you cannot use, for example, you have to use English, you cannot use Nepali. And I have, you know, yeah, there is an interesting story, and all of us know, so know what does it mean. So test as language policy perspective as well. Also, you know, if you are interested in language policy research, marketplace. I haven't seen a lot of research in Nepal in marketplace. My friend Balkrishna Sharma is doing some research on like tourism marketplace. So how language policy are created and how it impacts. For example, stores. If you go to a shop store, for example, your fashion store. So what languages are used there? is Newari used, and mostly I see sometimes. So who makes that language policy? Look at signboards. I will show you later. Look at signboards. If you look at Kathmandu's signboards in Kathmandu, you can see, dominantly English. And who told them, to use English there? So, it comes from the owners of the shop, and also maybe the public impression. And tourism, interesting, and even restaurant. If you look at the menu, so what language is used, and why these mostly English, and I can see English and Nepali bilingual, and sometimes even the minor, these indigenous languages, especially if you go to Thakali restaurant and Newari restaurant. So this is all interesting area to explore in terms of language policy. It's a marketplace is one space. Another space is called this linguistic landscape, the language used in public space. Yes, it can. Okay. Did you see that? Did you see this? Okay. So it says, I'm sorry, it is not interactive. I'm speaking a lot, which is not comfortable for me. But if you look at this is one of the verses in Kathmandu, and it says, आमाको जिन्दगी बाबाको प्यार ड्राइभर खलासीको जिन्दगी रोडमै छ यार. Very creative. Yes, तिम्री छोरी मेरो बसको फ्यान, डियर ससुरा बा, catch me if you can, and Bir Kavreli. So see, look at, so you can see more like fluid nature of language, not just Nepali, and you can see English as well. So very interesting, and nobody has this in this sense, like the owner of this shop or the driver or whoever is choosing two languages, Nepali and English, and mixing. It's very creative, and you can see here English and more. I think it's Chinese. You can see in Kathmandu so how Chinese language is. Maybe Pramoji talked about it later as well. So how Chinese language is visible in public spaces and has language policy. And this one, English speaking zone. And you can see this one definitely from schools, and not only private schools, and even the public schools have now this policy. English speaking zone. Speaking Nepali is strictly prohibited, and I have seen that, the teachers are punishing students for speaking languages other than English. So see, this is very interesting, language policy. So why English only here? There are kids from different language backgrounds. So why these kids are, why these schools are making this kind of policies? So I'm not making any judgment here, but as a researcher, so there are so many things that you can explore, and so many answers that you can gather from this kind of signs and symbols. Okay, this is very interesting. These days I'm really working on this language policy in public space, like city and language policy. Look at, this is beauty parlor thing. Your CR7 unisex, if you look at this one, CR7 unisex parlor and barber shop and cafe, your hair is 90% of your selfie. You are in service from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. So this is again beauty fashion. And this one, look at Tayama Beauty Home and Training Center, hair cutting, hairstyle, hair spa, all English. So, so why English here, and why the owners of these beauty shops are actually choosing English, not Nepali. So very interesting. So this is also part of language policy research. And this is another beauty parlor thing in Kathmandu. If you look at this beauty parlor things, it's very new phenomenon.
Prem sir, can you hear me? Shagun sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Probably, yeah, connection issue at the side.
Possibly, Prem sir has been disconnected. Yes.
Let me check. No, he's there.
He's there. Let me call him. I'm calling him.
Okay. In the meantime, if our participants have some questions, then you can, put them in
Yes.
chat box that Prem sir can answer later.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you can just write down. I'm just connecting to him.
Okay, if you have any questions, then please put them in chat box. Okay, Bimal Gautam has one question, which Prem sir would answer. Oh yeah, Prem sir is connected now. Let me unmute him.
Sorry, so I'll just share my slides. So I'm okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is, I was talking about this feminist beauty parlor. So, so this is again English. So what I'm saying is that the whole space of beauty parlor is mostly English dominated, and it's very interesting to look at the socio-political meaning of this language. Why these beauty shops are actually choosing English, not Nepali or other language. And also, this is very interesting area, could be interesting area of research, those who are interested in language policy. For example, family. So there are two books, there are a number of, some interesting articles coming out, but this is by Mila Schwartz and Anna Versick, and by Casey Smith Christmas. So these are two interesting books. So which look at actually how family, they develop the term family language policy. It sounds like family planning, but it's family language policy. How family members plan language. So some of the questions are like this. The answers are, so what languages are used or denied at home, and how do families maintain mother tongues or do not maintain mother tongues? What are the roles of parents in bringing up children with different languages, not just one language or only one language? And what are the tensions in family? Sometimes, even in my family, so we speak 4 different languages, and sometimes we say, okay, you speak this language and that language. Sometimes we speak very sacred things and we switch to mother tongue. Yes, and you see, this is very interesting area, the family language policy. And also this virtual space, like social media and Facebook, YouTube, and other spaces are really, really interesting spaces to research language policy issues. I just saw these three studies, like Ipkovic and Lotherington in 2009 published an article like Multilingualism in Cyberspace, conceptualizing the virtual linguistic landscape. What languages are used? And if you look at the Facebook comments and Twitter comments and even YouTube, you can see that people use this or that language, your language is non-standard, and something like that. And you can see that, like, our ministers is speaking English, so you see the comments from the audience, so how they are commenting. So there are so many things to analyze. Even Lely Han has done research on investigating language policy in social media, translation practices on Facebook. In 2015, I wrote an article on countering language ideologies, language policing in the EDU space of Facebook. So how this Facebook language using Facebook policy to be using this, you should not be speaking this way. and having some interest in the use of language. So virtual space is very interesting space of language policy as well. And even the hospitals. Yesterday, maybe also, I don't know, I didn't attend, the Pramoji must have said something about this. Like hospitals and other health officers. So how doctors write prescription in English only? Why? Why not in Nepali and why not in other languages? So it's very implicit. It's not, there is nothing written. And sometimes it's very difficult to understand their prescription. So why do doctors provide health services in Nepali only, or maybe in English only, or not in other languages, something like that. So for example, there are some interesting articles coming out by Skuster, Ilroy, and Ilmakais in 2017. So they published this. We are lost, measuring the accessibility of signage in public general hospital. If you look at the Nepal's hospital and public signs used in Nepal hospital and pharmacy, and most of them are English. And also this article, language barriers in Vienna hospital. So how people coming from different minoritized language communities face challenges in getting services. So now let me come to then, what are the different approaches and methodology if you are interested in doing language policy research? So let me go back to, again, history. If you look at the history, go back to more neoclassical in the early 1960s. So the neoclassical approach of language policy focuses more on selection, codification, modernization, and elaboration of the languages. So selecting one language as official language, or some languages as official language, develop grammar, dictionaries, expand its functions in public spaces. And mostly this kind of research, this kind of activities are called like corpus planning, status planning, acquisition planning. And so corpus is like more dictionary and grammar, textbooks. Status is giving official recognitions and using some languages medium of instruction and in government offices. And acquisition planning is more about teaching and learning. And look, how do you do research then to explore these kind of activities? And mostly survey research and more descriptive. So having questionnaire and documenting those things and more descriptive things. So what are the theories then people are looking at if you are taking more neoclassical traditional approach, more objective thing? So you see language, you draw on the theory of language revitalization, documentation, and even some literacy program, for example, mother tongue literacy program, yes, indigenous literacy. And from this perspective, language policy is defined as non-political, very technocratic, done mostly by experts, linguists, to solve language issues. And so it's more about technocratic thing. And now this is, if you see that now, mostly from 1990s. So there is a strong move to take historical structural approach in language policy research. So basically the focus is on inequalities and injustices, even the voices and participation and citizenship. I'll talk about this citizenship a little bit later, but what I'm trying to say here is if you are taking language policy from historical structural approaches, your research focus should be on more inequalities. You have an assumption that the language policy is mediated through power relations and there are some degrees of inequalities and there are injustices. And also you focus on who are participating in language policy making process, who are citizenship as nagarikta. I'm talking about citizenship as a participation, sahabhagita in policy making processes. And basically the questions that the critical structural approach asks is whose interests are served in language policy, who are included and who are excluded, who are empowered, who are marginalized. So this is this basic questions, ontological perspective that you have. And what are the methodology then, method of research then? So more people like talk about critical discourse analysis. So analyzing policy as from critical perspective. So saying that this policy is not neutral. There are something like there are inequalities, whose interests are served. It's a very asking same question, who are included, who are excluded, whose identities are recognized and whose identities are not recognized, whose voices are recognized here. And also Nexus analysis. So this is this Nexus. It's an approach. If you are interested to read, I can send the article. This is an approach to look at how historical, how social action is, each social action, including language policy, is historically embedded in the history of a particular society. You don't just look at the tip of iceberg. So you have to go back to the history and see what is this, what is the linkage. And also it's the same as like historical structural analysis, and also multimodality. So this multimodality refers to, you don't just analyze linguistic science, you also analyze other images, non-linguistic science as well. So as I've already shown you the images, for example, the images used in like beauty parlors have very interesting, very powerful meanings in terms of language policies. So for example, English language is served as the language of fashion, language of beauty parlor. So now you can ask questions, what does it mean? And from this, like, what are the theories then used? So as a researcher, if you are interested in taking historical structural approach, you are interested in language ideologies. And again, I said the assumptions and beliefs about the language. For example, neoliberalism. I think you had a wonderful panel discussions by Pradeep Giri. So and there are a lot of people who criticize this neoliberal ideology. So basically refers to neoliberalism is more about privatization, commodification, and then market, free market. So for example, what is the language of market? So what is the value of language is determined by market. So, and then the language that is given, more value in the market gets more privilege, and that's how, for example, English is a global language, for example. So it's important to look at how English has been a global language. What are these structural ideological factors? For example, also linguistic nationalism. So for example, mostly the language is considered as a symbol of nationalism. For example, Nepali, to be a Nepali, you have to speak Nepali kind of ideologies, and there are so many things. And even standard language ideologies. So you don't use like non-standard varieties. So you have to use standard Nepali, for example. You don't use like non-standard English, non-native variety of English. You should sound like American. You should sound like British. Maybe Chikaram sir has said something about this. So it's very interesting to look at this. And monolingualism. So what is the goal after all? So whether we are talking about bringing in monolingual ideologies or giving spaces for other languages as well. So there are a number of studies carried by like Igrin Piller and Thomas Ricento, even Marnie Holbrough's work. And also it's some people have, like some scholars have looked at this language citizenship or de-citizenship. If you want to read this book, I can send it. So language policy as part of citizenship, like Vedi Ramanathan talks about this. Here language citizenship refers to how language policy can help some group of people to participate fully in public life. For example, whether by saying that you should be speaking English only in classroom or school premises, who will be fully participating in teaching learning processes? Or do all children fully participate in the learning processes? So that's linguistic citizenship. Or are we ensuring linguistic citizenship, or we are participating in de-citizenship? And also language rights, like Tobe Skudnapungas talks about language is a right. So that is one theory. and also governmentality. So Foucault's governmentality, you may know that. So how people rationalize the governance of the language. For example, why English speaking, if you are speaking languages other than English, you are fined, for example, you have to pay some money. It's governmentality. So, and what is the rationality? It's like governance plus rationality. So what's the rationality? Because you improve your English, something like that. And also language policing. It's very interesting, as I have given example. If you speak some language, you are recognized. If you don't speak a specific language, then you are penalized and punished. It's like language policing. And also specific language, for example, you know that when this, one of the rappers was, rapping like "Staita Honi bro" kind of thing, he was arrested because it's part of, again, language policing, because the police they thought that he was not using proper language. And capital and violence as well. So linguistic capital by Pierre Bourdieu, if you are familiar with which language has capital, which language has value, which language doesn't have value in the market. And also violence, I'm not talking about physical violence only, even the symbolic violence is very, very important. So for example, if I cannot speak English properly, then yeah, I may feel that I'm excluded. I may feel that I'm powerless. And it's kind of like symbolic violence, And also people have looked at the post-colonial theories like Robert Phillipson's and Juan Tupas. And overall, if you are taking this historical structural approach, you are considering language policy as a socio-cultural phenomenon, and it's socio-political phenomenon, and it's ideological in nature. It's not neutral. There are ideologies, political interests invested in. So this is wonderful book if you are interested in reading, Language Policies in Education by James Tollefson. And these are the questions that, this is education, examples of education. So these are the questions he asked. So how do language policies in school create inequalities among learners? How do policies marginalize some students while granting privilege to others? How do language policies in education serve the interest of dominant groups within societies? And how can linguistic minorities further their interests through attempts to change language policies in school? So these are some overarching questions that researchers who take critical historical structural perspective in language policy research. For example, there are some research like Amir and Musk's research on language policing in foreign language classroom, how students in foreign language classes are policed. And Penny Cook talks about like research in Hong Kong, like docile bodies, like governmentality, how students are forced to speak a specific language. And as I have said, I have done one research on language policing in Facebook, and even Ricento writes about ideologies, politics, and policies focus on English. So these are some of the articles. Now, Sagunji, what's my time?
I think I need to check with DN sir. DNZ, can you just inform Prem sir about the time?
I think people are bored. I think, sorry.
No.
Yeah, I got it. Sir, 6:30 is our last time, and it's 6 o'clock.
Yeah, okay. Now I will finish in 10 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. We don't have chance to interact. We have unmuted everyone, muted everyone, and we do not have chance to interact. So it looks like that, but we are very much engaged, and it's a great session, sir. Please go on.
Okay, thank you,
sir.
Now, my favorite approach to do language policy research is this ethnographic approaches, which focuses on, if you look at this slide, the focus of ethnography of language policy is the processes of creation, negotiation, interpretation, and implementations of language policy and institutions, groups, and even individuals. For example, how do teachers create, negotiate, interpret, and implement language policies, specific language policy, for example, English as a medium of instruction. So the methodology that ethnographers, those who take ethnographic perspective, focus on like prolonged observation. So go to school and stay in school for long, maybe 1 year, 6 months and 3 months, observe classes, interview teachers, students, parents, and artifacts, like collect objects like the written notes of the students, their diaries, and so on. Even the images, take pictures and in the field notes. And also like some researchers have actually, and combine critical discourse and ethnography. So they call like critical discourse ethnographic approach. So which also analyze discourses, not necessarily collecting the contextual information, but also analyzing the discourses surrounding those contexts. So theories in this approach. So they are agency, the theory of agency, which refers to power to act, negotiate, and change. Despite any imposed language policies, the teachers may be doing something different. For example, even if the English medium of instruction policy is imposed, the teachers may be using children's home languages. It shows that they have power to act and negotiate and change depending on the needs of their kids. So it's agency. And also the theory of this ideological and implementational spaces. So how, this is used by Nancy Hornberger. So how different actors actually create space, both ideological space and implementational space for home languages or any language in the classroom. And also look at the theory of language ideologies and identities, the tensions. Ideologies are not singular, ideologies are plural, and there is always tension. And some people are saying that, okay, do this, some people are doing this, and what are the sources of those tensions, and also negotiations. And also looking at the ecology of language. So what are the ecology of environment of the language? What languages are used and in what context people are using different languages? And not just looking at one language, multiple language, the relationship between multiple languages. And also the sociolinguistics of globalization by Jan Blumart, if you have read, how globalization impacts local policies, local practices, and even local ideologies. So this is very interesting. So this is the book edited by Terry McCarthy in 2014. So you must be interested in ethnography of language policy. So what I'm saying here is critical perspectives both focus on inequalities, but ethnographies focus more on the agency, what can be changed and how people can negotiate and appropriate and implement. How many of you love onion? I think all of you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So from ethnographic perspective, language policy is multi-layered. It's not just, one linear phenomenon. So as you see that this, and as a researcher, you have to unpeel this, this layers. So if you look at this, you can see the macro level, state and national, international policies. At the meso level, like districts and clusters, for example, resource centers, organizations, different NGOs and INGOs, even the communities are different policies. And these days you can see local governments are having their own language policies. It may not in line with macro policies. And even now we go down to micro, which is schools and classrooms. So each school may have different policies, and classrooms may have, each teachers in the classroom may have different policies. And what I'm saying here is the language policy should be considered as multi-layer. So one language policy may have multiple policies. One policy, macro level policies, may be in tension with meso and micro policies as well. So from this perspective, if you are taking more ethnographic perspective, language policy is multi-layer socio-cultural practice, which involves agency, ideological tensions, and multiplicity of appropriations and implementation. So one policy can be appropriated differently, implemented differently, because it is interpreted differently and people have different ideologies. It's very interesting. If you are interested in ethnography, then these are the 5. Johnson in 2009 wrote an article on the ethnography of language policy, and who highlights 5 different aspects of doing research from ethnographic on language policy from ethnographic perspective. One is looking at agents. So who are the people involved? Who are the people impacted? goals. What are the goals of language policies? For example, EMI. What are the goals of EMI? Processes. What are the processes of this creation of the policies? Who are consulted? Who were not consulted? And discourses which engender and perpetuate the policy. What are the discourses? For example, हाम्रो अंग्रेजी माध्यमको policy भनेको चाहिँ mostly is neoliberal, private, competition, all those things. So surround this, English provides jobs, something like that, and dynamic social and historical context. But what are the social and historical contexts of, for example, English as a medium of instruction policies? So these are the things that you look at if you are taking more historical perspective. Now, my perspective is more than this, like I call it engaged ethnography. And again, this is from the book by I co-author. So basically now it's not just always, enough to document what policies are saying and how it is created, how it is appropriated, but also how it is transformed and how new policies are created is important. We call engaged ethnography. And basically it focuses on the five core components. One is decolonizing language ideologies. So we are inherited with a number of colonizing ideologies, and which have been very hegemonic. It comes through our discourses, it comes through public discourses, it comes through policy texts. For example, we consider multilingualism as a problem. It comes from more European ideology of the nation state. And multilingualism is a threat to nationalism. And again, another very European nationalistic ideologies. And multilingualism is onerous. I mean, not necessary. And linguistic Darwinism. So those languages who have power will survive, and those languages who don't have power will die. That's another ideology. And neoliberalization and commodification, another ideology which is more Euro-American centric capitalist ideologies related to language, and monoglossic and monolingual ideologies. So all these ideologies should be questioned. And then we free ourselves and we try to find out alternative ideologies that embraces our local realities and epistemologies as well as ideologies. So the second thing is we should be focusing on linguistics or injustice. My take on it mostly on epistemic injustice. But here, I mean the epistemic is whose knowledge is recognized in language learning processes, for example. Is this us, this teacher, or is this someone else's knowledge is recognized? Whether we consider learners as a source of knowledge, whether they bring something in the classroom, or we say that, okay, they don't bring anything. Okay, you have nothing, kids. So you have to speak what I speak, what you have to speak the way I speak, you have to follow me. Something like that. So it's called like epistemic injustice, because we are not recognizing the resources, the knowledge that kids bring in the classroom, and language is very important resource they bring in the classroom. So for example, bilingual, multilingual, and plurilingual identities of the children, we consider them more as monolingual, we consider them as multilingual. So these are the questions that we should be asking. And also dialogue for ideological analysis. So in this book, we mostly focus on how dialogues like Freirean, mostly Paulo, dialogue will help understand ideologies and create or develop ideological awareness. We call it ethnographic dialogue. It's not dialogue for the sake of dialogue, but grounding dialogue in the context, in the local context. For example, simply I observe EMI classes of the teachers, and after coming out of the class, and I tell them, okay, why are you using this English? Not necessarily like the big questions, but also discussing in the process of the critical reflection of what happened in the classroom, and they understand what was working and what was not working, and it helps to raise ideological awareness. And mostly, I also like this agenda-based workshops. So meaning that the teachers and students and researchers work with different members on a specific agenda. For example, EMI, how to make teaching in EMI effective, and do workshops and you hear open discussions and see what are the ideologies they are bringing in. So there there are some works like such on trans-identity space. Science teaches as engaged language planner. So what I'm saying here is language planning is not just for English language teachers or language teachers. It is important for all other subject teachers as well. So Greg Usioda, Siva research on engagement policy and partially and Tsuki communities in Hawaii. So now my reflection is how it is important as a researcher, how we see language policy. What does it mean for us? So language policy is just a text, language policy as a discourse, or language policy as a practice or performative action. So for me, language policy is not just a text, it is a discourse and it is performative action. We perform something. So that's why it's a verb that Pramodji said in our panel discussion before. And how do we perceive the role of language? Language is a problem, or languages is a problem. Language is our right, like mother tongue in Nepal's discourse, or language is a resource. It helps to learn other languages as well. It helps languages help to access economic and other resources, what it is. So it is very important to ask ourselves these questions. Now for the future research, now I'll take 5 minutes. So we should, the researches in language focusing more on language ideologies, but more multiple and contested. Basically looking at ratio-linguistic ideologies. You may know a lot of work. Ratio-linguistics, so how language policy reproduces racial identities. So for example, whether the standard language, whether the language policy is recognizing the language practices used by Black communities. Non-standard, for example, Doteli. So how do we view the non-standard variety used by Nepali speakers? Ethno-linguistics, so how do we view the way that linguistic minorities use Nepali, speak Nepali? So these things, neoliberal and imagined futures. For example, learn English and go to, if you are competent in English, you will get job, you will have very good future, wonderful life. So more imagined futures, you know, it's very important. And people are looking at, if you are interested, you can look at Anderson's book as well. So also order of languages, so how languages are hierarchized, and indexicality of the languages, basically Jan Bloemar's and he talks about value, specific value, index. So also motives like inequalities, why particular language policies have created inequalities, to address inequalities or perpetuate inequalities, integrating in the mainstream society, insecurity, instrumentality. And as I said, also agency is very important. How can different actors create and change policies, and also ecology and the power relations within the language practices and also hierarchies. I'm sorry, now I conclude with the implications for education. So these are two books that my favorite books. So one is Language Policy for Multilingual Classroom, Pedagogy of the Possible by Christine Hillot and Maurice O'Lowry. And this is very good book. Like if you are interested in researching language policy in schools by David Corson, which was written mostly in American context, but it gives a lot of ideas on that. So what are the implications, those who are interested in language policy in education? So one is, it is very important to look at the multilingual classrooms. And very interesting in the case of Nepal as well, because we have, like in some classes, we have like 4 language speakers in the community. And most of the kids are bilingual and some are trilingual, some speak 4 languages as well. And look at how teachers are dealing with those languages. And this Christine Hillot and O'Lowry talks about the pedagogy of possible. So there are not always problems. This multilingualism is not a problem, but there are possibilities. So within this bigger theory, so we consider schools as a social space where children come from different language backgrounds, and keeping students and learning at the center. So we move away from, focusing on language policy as a text and see how it impacts students and learning. And how language policy, how it impacts on teachers' identity agency. I have seen one of my students, if Nani Babu is here, I don't know, he's doing his PhD research on how EMI policy is, creating some identity issues for the teachers, mostly for the teachers who have been teaching for long in school. And also looking at multilingual and plurilingual pedagogy. So how teachers are teaching multilingual children and how they are creating space for multiple languages. And looking at multilingual awareness, how teachers are aware of multiple languages, importance of multiple languages or multilingualism, and how students are aware of this. And one area of the research could be even community engagement. So how community members can create language policies in education. So just to highlight, one area those who are interested could be, this is another book written by Kate Menken and Ophelia Garcia, Negotiating Language Policies in Schools. So basically looking at teachers as language policy makers. So teachers' role are not simply passively, accepting what government says. It's not always what teachers do not, do what policies, macro policies tells them to do, but they negotiate and they create sometimes their own policies as well, because they are the people who are closely in contact with the kids, they know who are learning and who are not learning in terms of language, due to language. So that's why they can create their own policies as well. So it is important to look at how teachers are making their own policies here. So how are language education policies interpreted, negotiated, and resisted by different actors could be another interesting area of research. Even the students make language policies. And you see that, language captains in private schools, very interesting. So, and at home, if you are speaking, basically this is very, very challenging for indigenous parents. Their parents their kids don't allow them to speak their mother tongue, for example. Yes, and it's very interesting how kids can also become language policy. Now, my conclusion is, we should, as a language policy researcher, we should move away from language as a problem to system as a problem. So we are not blaming anyone. So we are blaming the whole system, and language is not a problem. And we should move away from singularity to plurality of language policy. There is no one policy. There are multiple policies because there are multiple actors. And our focus should be on learning and learners' identity. So whether kids are actually learning by specific policies that we are following and we are adapting. For example, are they learning? Look at EMI, look at mother tongue education, look at multilingual education. What are the challenges there? And focusing more on teacher agency, as I have said, this is my favorite term. So how teachers can create their own policies in school context. And as I said, like social justice is very important, and language policy plays very critical role in denying social justice, or sometimes in guaranteeing the social justice. So that's why it's very important. And I'm not saying social justice is a big concept here, and I see social justice from the point of view of participation, whether the kids are participating effectively, whether the parents are participating effectively, whether the teachers are participating effectively in teaching learning process by following the mandates of a specific language policy. If they are not participating, for example, in EMI classes, so far I have observed, so most kids remain silent, and silencing remains in the word of Michel Foucault. It remains as a power of to silence them, and it is kind of like symbolic violence, and it doesn't ensure social justice, and it's kind of symbolic injustice. And it's very important to move to focus on language ideological awareness. So not blaming anyone, but looking at how these different actors are ideologically aware of a particular meaning of particular language policies. So do they know that why EMI is implemented? What are the, for example, what are the ideologies? What are the socio-political meaning? Who are benefited and who are not? Mother tongue education. So whose interests are served by mother tongue education, whether it is empowering or disempowering, all those things. So I'm not speaking just from an activist perspective, but I'm speaking from more researcher's perspective. So it's very important to look at. So yes, thank you very much. So thank you for listening to me, and I know it's tiring, and thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful sharing. Though you're just speaking, and everyone is, I think many more questions have been written here, and it's a kind of interaction as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And but now we have more questions. I think first Pushpaji has one question. Pushpaji. Pushparajji. Pushpa sir, Sagun sir, can you unmute him?
Okay.
Pushparaj.
Okay, it's done.
Okay.
Oh, it's not done yet. Okay, let me do it again. Yeah, it's done.
Thank you, Dian sir and Sagun sir, for giving me space. Whenever I get to attend your lectures, presentations, or panel discussion, I feel like I'm having my psycholinguistics or sociolinguistics class in the Department of English at Tribhuvan University, Prem sir. Language policy is always a tension-filled phenomenon. What a great remark this is. Thank you so much, Dr. Phyak. Being a language teacher practitioner, I always have concern on practical aspects. So what I like to ask you here is it possible for a monolingual or hardly bilingual teacher like me to engage in mother tongue based multilingual teaching in a larger classroom where our students are generally from varied multilingual background, and mother tongue based multilingual education is indeed a people's choice and voice at current scenario as well. And my second concern is what is our role as a teacher to preserve the mother tongues and the culture of the children in the current situation, as you said, dominated by neoliberalism, linguistic nationalism, standard language ideology, and sometimes even monolingualism. Please suggest some practical ways so that we teachers can make our children have respect toward their mother tongues, and at the same time they are equally competent in the global scenario as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Phyak.
यो अहिले उत्तर दिइहाल्ने हो कि कसले गरेर गर्ने हो?
Answer दिइहाल्नु.
Okay, that's interesting because people may leave. So okay, मलाई चाहिँ कस्तो लागिरहेछ भने यो अझै 2 दिन गर्नु पाए भने चाहिँ मजा आउला जस्तो लाग्छ. Okay, this is the, I think you are speaking first. I analyzing your question, I see that you are speaking from teacher's perspective, yes, not necessarily researcher's perspective. Because yes, I think that's very practical question, and I agree with you that many people ask these questions when I talk about multilingual education. So in Nepal, there are many languages. So how do we do it? Because I don't speak the kids' languages, mother tongue, for example. But, and this is very valid questions. But there are ways, for example, one way that Li Wei, if you are familiar with, he has done research on how to teach English to Chinese because they don't understand Chinese very well. So one way of doing research teaching is co-learning. You can learn from kids. Or in a school, there may be the kids who can speak more than one language. Yes, and they speak both, they understand both Nepali and, for example, mother tongue. I'm just giving example. And you can learn from the kids as well. And you can use those kids to help, to work as a broker. And in a school as well, like that's co-learning. And there is another approach called co-teaching. For example, Pushpaji, if I'm teaching in a school where I cannot speak Tharu, for example, but there are Tharu teachers as well who can speak Tharu, yes? And then I can teach, for example, co-teach. I teach, I and the Tharu teachers go together in a class and we can co-teach them wonderfully. And also, but ideally speaking, Pushpaji, it's always good to be bilingual teacher, and it's always good to be multilingual teacher. And this is not we have focused on yet. But but even monolingual teachers can deal with multilingual students if they have some pedagogical skills. You don't necessarily, ideally, yes, good to have multilingual competence, but it may not always be, available, that kind of teachers. So it's there are ways, multilingual pedagogies. Yeah, I just gave, and sometimes in some schools even they invite parents who do not have like teaching skills, but they can work as someone who can interpret languages. So there are ways, but remember, I don't feel there is no any problem to learn from kids. They can teach me. It's very effective. And the main question is how we perceive these kids, whether we perceive them as monolingual learners or without any resource, or we perceive them as someone who has brought like a rich linguistic and cultural resources in the classroom, something like that. Thank you. That's a big question.
Thank you, Puspa sir, and thank you, Dr. Phyak, for answering his question as well. Now, again, please, floor is open for you, participants.
I can see so many interesting questions on chat. So can you copy and send me this chat so that I can think and if I have some time.
Sir, I'm documenting every file here. Every file has been documented.
That's wonderful.
Someone for the research we need is to come.
So Gokulji privately sent me a message like, how do you think should be the language policy in education of Nepal? It's very big question. Again, you are considering me as a policy maker. Please, I'm not policy maker. So I said I'm a researcher. So, but from researcher's perspective, I think because it is multilingual country, it should be multilingual. There is no any harm in having multilingual policies, but there is harm in implementing, adapting monolingual policies for multilingual kids and children. So that's why, for me, that's very straight answer. So there is an interesting story by Chiring Gurung. Are you there? So can you say something about that? So I can.
Chiringji?
We have unmuted Chiring, so probably Chiring can speak.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Namaste to all.
Yes, namaste, Chiring.
Actually, I'm from a hostel. I'm from a very remote area of Nepal called Dolpa. And due to lack of some education in Dolpa, I came here to Kathmandu and I'm in hostel right now. And we used to have a certain rules in a hostel, like we have to speak in English. English was compulsory for us to speak. And if you speak in native language or Nepali language, we used to get punishment. So is this rule good for us, or it is beneficial for the students?
Okay, again, there is no answer like saying good or bad. But honestly speaking, the implication is that there is language policing, yes? By speaking the language that you understand, for example, Nepali or native, speak the language that you want to speak. If you are fine, it's a good example of language policing, and it creates a kind of sense of, I would say, it creates sense of fear maybe, and sense of who is sharing screen. Can you stop?
Can you please, Santosh ji?
So
it is
yes,
unknowingly I know. Santosh ji.
So for me, this policy is not actually, yeah, I'm laughing because I have so many interesting stories like that from the private schools. But by no means it's a good policy, because it hampers in socialization of kids, and I don't think that, like, by imposing English only policies in all all spaces there is a good English language proficiency. There is a strong misconception about English, differences between speaking English and English language learning. So yes, thank you, Chiring. So I really like this story, and maybe I'll talk to you about more, to know more about this story.
Okay.
I love
Okay,
stories like this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Basant Karnil has a question. I think he's raising his hand. Basantaji?
Yes, I'm listening, sir.
Are you here, Prasantaji? Wow, this.
Yes, sir. Namaskar, sir. Namaskar. First of all, I'm really enlightened with your wonderful presentation, sir. May I have one question, sir?
Yes, yes. Wow, good.
As you discussed about different approaches of language policy, so since my research area has critical ethnography approach, so
I know.
can you please a little bit highlight about critical ethnography, how the critical ethnography approach can be applied in the present context, as my research area is how the language policy is created in the present context, especially in the federal Nepal, especially in the local government, local level. So how I can link this critical ethnography to the research?
Okay, I think what is the space that you are looking at?
So local government, especially the municipalities, rural municipalities, and even the ward, and even
Okay.
I'm going to the school level, sir.
I don't know why you are doing so many things. Like if you are doing ethnography, it should be really, really specific spaces. Yes.
Yeah.
And definitely by looking through the window of that particular space, you can definitely link other levels of language policy as well. As an ethnographer and critical ethnographer, it is very important to look at again how policies are created. Are you looking at policy as a text, or are you looking at policy as a creation, appropriation, implementation, and even interpretation, and even resistance sometimes? And what are the interests? Look, what are the interests of doing that? For example, if I were you, I could go to their meeting, for example, municipality meeting, and I will listen to their discussion about what language should be used in school, what language should be, if they are discussing on language policy issues, and I would listen to their discussions, and I will analyze who is saying particular thing. For example, who is saying that, okay, mother tongue should be used in our office, who is saying that English should be used in English. So that is creation. And even not only creation, so how schools are implementing the policies mandated by the local government, for example. English in EMI policy, how schools are implementing. So please, I think it's very important to make it bottom up and see these three things, like creation of language policies and even interpretations of language policies and how they are implementing. And because appropriation or implementation, because you are doing critical ethnography, and it is very important to look at more, critical perspective. So how it relates to how empowerment or disempowerment, how it relates to injustice or inequalities. You are a researcher, by the way, and I would love to read your work, Basanta. You have been lost for long.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Gokul Sharma has question. I think he has raised his hand. Gokul, sir? I'm supposed to Gokul there because he's died for me time and again.
Thank you, DNG. Namaste, Prem sir. Nice to see you online.
Yeah, nice to hear you.
Thank you for answering my question. Actually, I was quite concerned. It's because I know that you have been, investing a lot of time from on your side on this language policy. You have published books, and you have done a lot of research on it. Your presentation. Actually, I have started thinking about whether I should be carrying out one of my research on language policy in Nepal.
Please do it. Do it. You're welcome.
So
let's do it together.
But I would like to regarding Miss Chiring's, what she had written in the chat box, and then how she wanted to raise a question regarding the language policy of the schools or the institutions where they were compelled to, speak English. And if they didn't, they were asked to pay fines, and there were several other types of punishments given in, boarding schools, in common boarding schools all around Nepal. I believe, they have a kind of a language policy, like you said.
Yeah,
it's because these schools are, established on certain, what you call, certain grounds. They have got their, educational dimensions, and therefore, I have been, why I wanted to answer, give a kind of a feedback is because I taught in St. Xavier's High School for a long time, and then I taught in St. Mary's High School even more than that. So I believe they have a kind of a, certain policy of, implementing English as a, as a part of their life. So these kinds of institutions, when they produce their, their graduates, they are some kind of worldwide citizens. So
yeah,
I studied in a boarding school for a, for a long time, and I stayed like her. I stayed in the hostel for a long period of time at Budhankanta school. So the time we went there, right from class 4, we had to speak in English, though we did not know much about English. And I started learning English at the age of 9 in class 4. So the first word I might have learned is to say good morning and good afternoon, even if I didn't know how to say ABCD or how to write, it is a dog, or, it is a cat. So I believe, it's the language policy of those particular institutions, how they are, how they are establishing themselves in the field of education.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting area of research on how schools as a language policy makers. The government has not told them to use English only policy, but they are still doing it. And I'm saying that, I'm not saying, if you want to, if I put my activist hat, then I would say this is not good. All kinds of monolingual policies is not good. But if you want to really research, there are so many other things embedded there. It's not, I cannot just say that this is this and this is that, but it's very important to look at and to research. So,
but Mr. Phyak, sorry, Prem sir, I'm strictly against the kind of the policy that the government has brought, or let's say, the community schools have been changed into English medium. I am completely against it. And I believe that that's not the proper way of, how the language policy should go in Nepal.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, I think I will be quick. The first thing is there are two really deep rooted ideologies that are creating misconception. The first thing is people are, when I say people, at the general discourse, like policy as a discourse, the discourse is that there is English language teaching, ELT, is synonymous to English as a medium of instruction, which is not true. And the next thing is being multilingual or having multilingual practices in classroom does not promote, does not help the learning of second language or some new language. So that's another misconception that we have. But and as you said, that Gokul, thank you for bringing this issue. And this EMI policy, for example, is not really based on this, what evidences have actually said. And I myself started learning English from grade 4. And when I spoke, I don't know when I spoke English, maybe when I was doing my master's degree. I'm talking about speaking English. And yeah, I used to read books and write what was written in the books. And I was very anxious in speaking English. And yeah, I don't know. But look, as a researcher, it's very interesting to look at why these private schools are using this. What is the motive? Look, researchers here, just ask these questions. And you will find so many things inside, and whether it is happening, how teachers are feeling, how students are feeling. So Thank you very much. There are so many questions. Like Gyanuji wants to ask one question.
Sir, his queries must be answered. He's doing PhD. So.
Okay. Gyanuji. Yeah. Hello, Gyanuji.
Gyanu sir, let me unmute you.
So thank you, Prem sir.
Thank you, Gokul-ji. Nice to chat with you.
Okay, G-Y-A-N. Gyanu means Gyanendra or Gyanu?
He's Jananu.
Spelling is J. Okay, J. G.
He's on mute now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prem sir, namaste. Thank you indeed, sir, for your insightful presentation. It's very really resourceful for me exactly. Can you hear, sir?
Yes.
Sir, just I want to have your perspective only. Just as we have seen that there is the scenario of hierarchical multilingualism in Nepal, or let's say in South Asian countries, as it can also be said that burden of double divide. I have recently gone through one article, Tupaz article. Then how can we settle the languages as there is inequalities among the languages in educational landscape? What's your perspective? I just would like to ask your perspective on, is it possible through transitional model of languages in school level, or there are other ways? Thank you.
That is big question. You are talking about, I would say, inequalities of multilingualism. And some people use hierarchy of multilingualism as well. So we have my colleague. Okay. So even if it's very interesting, like saying multilingualism is not always a solution, because even a multilingual country like Nepal, so the languages are unequal, and that inequalities of multilingualism, Ruani Tupaz calls inequalities of multilingualism. Actually, I and my colleague Lakshmi Oza has written a chapter on inequalities of multilingualism in Nepal. Even if we talk about multilingual education, it's very difficult because we have very long history of inequalities of languages, and that historical, as I said before, critical historical perspective, looking from it relates to caste system, it relates to class system, it relates to region. There are so many things coming in this inequalities of multilingualism. But for me, I wouldn't say these are that language, but it's very important to look at how we can create spaces for multilingual practices, or plurilingual, more than 3 or 4 language plurilingual practices. Your question is like transition. I don't think, I don't, personally speaking, my perspective is that transitional multilingualism doesn't work. And again, it is the reproduction of more Western colonial ideologies where the minorities' languages were considered as a problem. For example, teaching using medium of instruction from up to grade 3, and now switching to second language, it doesn't work. It should be sustained throughout. And I'm not kind of like saying that, this language should be separated from other language as well. So there are models, there are practices through which children can develop multilingual, Bibin Cook's idea of multiple competencies simultaneously. So for me, it should be throughout. There is no way. And I'm trying in higher education as well, and it works really wonderfully. Sometimes simple translanguaging is very creative,
Yeah, of course.
And so that's why for me, if you want to ask my perspective, transitional model doesn't work for sustainable multilingual practices and pedagogy.
Can we say this language as a medium of instruction and language as a subject can be just taken together, so that this multilingual aspect can be consolidated?
These are 2 different things. So multilingual education as subject teaching is same as like English language teaching, and Chinese language teaching or Nepali language teaching. So when I say education, mostly I call it medium of instruction. It's not just learning a language. Learning any language is fine, like learning as an English language. But using that language for learning other skills and academic ideas are very problematic. So for me, my medium could be more multilingual. It sounds like, very radical, but it's important. And I would say that in early grades, it's very important to have multilingual resources for all kids. And again, I'm not saying that, you should be, you don't have, in English language classroom, for example, how do you bring mother tongue resources? You don't have to translate, you don't have to stop using English and mother tongue. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work in translate in grammar translation way. But using resources as you use other resources to help learning English, for example. For example, comparative analysis could be very interesting, using cognates, and even in teaching writing, you can ask kids to brainstorm their ideas in their mother tongue and preparing draft in both languages and gradually switch to English. There are ways to do, but it's very important to talk about multilingual awareness, to what extent we are aware.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gyanuji. I'd love to read your paper.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Great.
KPG has question, I think, sir. KPG, over to you.
Oh, there are so many interesting questions, DNG. I think I will. Thank you. So there are questions that make me think.
Okay, sir. We'll do it also. KPG is now unmuted. So after that.
Yeah.
KPG, मेरे sir? Can you hear me? No, he's not. Okay, sir, we can go for the questions given then.
Yeah, Samiksha ji is asking, what would be the possible solution to current tensions in language policy processes? Let me know of as if I was listening.
No, that is different.
That is Samiksha Birari.
Yes, sir. The second question was not a question. The first was the question, and I would repeat that again. What would be the possible solution to the current tensions in policy processes? And one more question. Okay, so maybe if you can answer that one first. I think it's a long answer, so I don't know if you can. Thank you, sir.
What is the second question?
Second question is, where do we head to or for embracing Nepal's linguistic diversity?
Okay, the first question is solution and tension. Okay, as I said, language policy, whatever it is always a tension-filled phenomenon. So as a researcher, it's very important, interesting to look at those tensions. Even multilingual policies are full of tensions, actually. So I'm not sure why we are looking at the the solution of those tensions, but so far as I understand, maybe we should, one way of minimizing tensions, if I can use that word, so be like more community engagement. As I have said, look at the agencies, how the people at the bottom, for example, if you are making policies related to education, see, look at how teachers can change policies or how teachers can implement policies. It's very important. And most policies in Nepal are always top down. And I should say 100% top down, and maybe super top down. And the policies like the other actors, I don't say stakeholder, I say actors, like parents, teachers, students do not know what policies are coming out. And all of a sudden, they have to follow that. And they had no clue. And that's why they start creating, negotiating, and how it works with their kids. So Samiksha's attention is always there, and as a researcher, it is good. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes, sir.
So, and the next question is where we are heading to in terms of diversity. I am very optimistic, yet I'm very critical, because as you see that the Constitution vaguely, I should say vaguely, embraced multilingual policy as a state policy. So the policy should be multilingual. And as you see that even the recent Education Act and even the CDC document gives spaces for kids' home languages, in early grades, basically. And for like social studies and other like subjects, it should be in mother tongue or Nepali, in the language they understand. In some ways, there is a kind of like response to monolingual EMI policy, and I feel that there is a kind of like realization of importance of diversity. But again, I'm very critical because teachers don't know how it should be done.
Yes,
because like teacher education, we have trained English language teachers, we have trained Nepali language teachers, we have trained and social study teachers, but we don't have multilingual language training, multilingual teachers. And university like Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu University, we have ELT program, we have other programs, but there is I don't think that we have courses even on language policy and multilingual education, how it is important. So that's why there is a gap in terms of how we do. Mostly teacher education is lacking. So for me, it's very important. So that's why in my conclusion, I said that it's very important to look at like multilingual awareness.
Yes, sir.
And my conclusion is like, look, multilingual pedagogy is not only needed for language teachers. It should be for all teachers, like social study teachers, science teachers, mathematics teachers, because our kids come from different language backgrounds, and it's very important resources them in teaching science and social studies. So that's why it's like not, you should be these multilingual teachers or you are not multilingual teachers. In a way, it should be for all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Now, any more queries?
Gyanendra-ji.
Okay, Gyanen sir. Gyanenji is interested in that always. He was requesting me to send these all recordings of Dr. Phyak last time. Okay, sir.
Thank you very much, dear sir. And Prem sir, are you listening to me?
Oh yes, very good.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. You said being multilingual speaker has some benefit in language classroom or maybe in other also. I, as a language teacher, I have also this kind of experience where I benefited from it. At the same time, I also have kind of problem. Whenever I was going from one language to another one, there was a kind of change in identity, the way a student perceive. For example, I'm a Mathli speaker from Tarai Madhesh. Yeah. So my ethno-linguistic identity would appear. More than a teacher, I became something else in that context. Yeah. So I don't know, like I'm doing autoethnography on exploring my own identity as a language teacher. So this one aspect is coming there. Would you mind telling me or sharing something about?
Are you talking about your identity as it is reflected in your language, the use of language, or your ethnicity as perceived by the students?
I think both are somehow playing their role. And when I'm exploring my own journey, so that's more inclusive. I don't know where to differentiate. but then I want to explore that aspect also. So would you share something about that ethno-linguistic identity as English teacher?
That's very difficult question, Gyanendraji, but I have, maybe it's somehow related to how you feel, but I think it's something related to like more ratio-linguistic ideologies or ethno-linguistic ideologies.
Yeah.
Maybe you feel that you are losing your ethno-linguistic identity and embracing new.
Actually, I felt like being challenged as an English teacher because of my ethno-linguistic identity at certain point in classroom.
But
At,
it's called,
at the same time, also admitting that it has played some good role also. So sometimes as a math speaker, I have more example.
Yeah, there is an interesting study that, you know, the notion of like thought space by Homi Bhabha.
Yeah.
You may be interested in looking at Arjun Appadurai's this disjuncture. How the speaker, how multilingual speakers, when they are learning second language or third language, are actually creating thought spaces, not necessarily mother tongue identity or second language identity, but in between. And I would also recommend you to read maybe Bonnie Norton's Second Language Identity and David Block's Second Language Identity. So could be really interesting. But you know, this story is very interesting, Gyanendraji. I haven't heard many things about this kind of work. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I'll be expecting some of the document if possible in this area. And thank you very much.
Yeah, email me. Yes, I'm free these days. So.
Okay, sir. Thank
you. Any more questions? Participants? Sirs, any more questions?
Dear sir.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I have put that in chat box also.
So can you please
may I ask, may I ask now?
Sure.
Thank you very much for the insightful presentation, Dr. Phyak. And my query is, observing the greater priority, preferences, and penetration of English language in almost all domains of Nepal, and the language policy serving the same interests. So what do you foresee about the future of originality and status of Nepali language, especially Nepali language? So this is my question, sir.
Okay. Two things. So first, I mean, there is you are right that there is increasing trend of using English and speaking English and learning English, and this is kind of like globalization and more neoliberal. I don't say it more globalization, because Nepali is a global language now. It's not just English, because you speak, there are many people who speak Nepali in America, in Japan, in UK, in the UK and other countries. So this whole rhetorics of globalization is just like ideological. So speaking from that perspective, I think the Nepali, it's not that easy, but I would say that if this kind of like push towards monolingual English only medium of instruction from early grades, so particularly in school spaces, in I would say education spaces, so there is a, I mean the space for Nepali is shrinking, and it is very interesting to see that, you know, the kids who have taken like English medium education are not actually, you know, writing really good Nepali, even in their higher education, for example. In other words, so they are losing their first language competence in many ways. So my point is, like, there are ways that students can learn very good English without losing their first language. Rather, they can go together. So if now again, if my answer is in if there is an increasing craze towards using English, I'm not talking about ELT, I'm English language teachers, English language teaching. I'm talking about using English as a medium of instruction in all spaces like this, then definitely it will impact, it will shrink the space of English and other local languages. So that's why people like us who have some knowledge about diversity and understanding the importance of languages, and it is important to push this agenda further. So yeah, thank you. I think I don't know whether I answered.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Min sir, and thank you, Dr. Phyak. And now Sujit Maharjan has a question. I think Sujit ji, have unmuted you. Please.
Yes, sir.
Ask your question.
Namaste, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we met again, Sujit ji. Yes,
yes,
we
sir.
met.
My day began with you, and it is ending with your presentation.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, how lucky we are.
Yes, sir.
I'm so lucky.
Yes, sir. So this is more towards language and psychology rather than language and policy, sir. I don't know how relevant this is.
This is relevant, yeah.
I have always been fascinated by this idea and haven't quite found such studies. So the context is, I know 4 languages so far: Newari, Nepali, English, and Hindi. So I might learn 1 or 2 more in the future.
Yeah.
So with the hopes that my child will be well versed in all 6 or 5 languages that I know,
wow.
I decide to talk with him Sunday in English and Monday in Nepali, like that. I talk with him every day in a different language. So how is that going to affect the child's psychology? Because I talked with some friends and they say the child's mind is a developing mind. So before 5 or in early age, you should not mess up the child mind with many languages, as it is just forming. So has there been any studies done in this area, or do you have any idea if we do that?
Yeah, there is a yeah, there are studies on the role of age on learning language, and even the use of multiple languages. And what is true is that using multiple languages is okay in everyday conversation.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you are you are already a language policy maker. So if somebody is interested in doing family language policy, I think, yes, Sudhiji, you are very perfect participant of the study. So because very few parents do that. And,
yes,
and I'm sure that there are so many tensions in your family. Sometimes your parents may not like, your kids may not like that, or, like the idea.
Yes.
So there is no any psychological negative impact by using as many languages as possible. Rather, the
yes,
studies have shown that there is more creativity, and this is, that the metacognitive,
yes,
metacognitive skills, because more languages develop more cognitions and metacognitive skills, because they think in multiple ways and multiple languages.
Yes.
There is a researcher called Bellistock, who has done a number of studies on this, like psycholinguistic aspect of how exposing learners with multiple languages generates multiple thoughts, multiple meta-linguistic and metacognitive skills. So there is more advantage than disadvantage. But there are big myths that if you expose multiple languages, children are confused. Children are there is a delay in learning, so which is not true. It's not true.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Sujit ji. Thank you for this question.
Thank you, Sujit ji. Answer. Now, any more questions? Hiralal ji, I think Hiraji has questions. Let him ask first. Can I?
Sure.
Okay, Hira sir. Hiralal sir. Hiralal Mokhtan sir. I think he is there, but I don't know where is he. Okay, okay, fine, sir. He's not there now. Please carry on.
Okay, so there is an interesting question on chat by Japan from so someone from Japan. I forgot the chat. So who wants to share a very interesting story?
So I think that's me.
Samiksha?
That's me again, sir. Yes, sir.
No, there is someone who says like Santosh. No, no Santosh. Chet, no, not Chet. Krishna, no. Oh, I forgot now. Okay, Mehta. Oh no. Okay, I forgot. So yeah, someone else. Okay. So Gitaji is saying whether imposing English is good or bad. That's... Gita, are you here?
I think Gitu got tries that.
Gita,
Gitu, are you there? Kafle, okay. Let me unmute. G-I-T-A. Yes, I got it. Okay, Gitaji, you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good evening here. Are you somewhere?
Sorry, I am confused. I have been living in the online from morning to evening. Today the day began.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. No morning, no evening, no Sunday, no Friday, no days. It's all 24 hours. Yeah.
I am also imposing English in my school, but it's hampering the children rather than improving their level. They have been either Nepali students or English. So some parents want to make the school only English speaking zone. But I think we are not giving them much knowledge. They are lacking the real achievement.
Yes.
They have been either Nepali or English students. They learn nothing. They are, what to say? They are lost somewhere.
Yeah,
What can I do, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's real issue, Gitaji. I think I have been to your school and so. But remember, it's not just for public schools. Even I have observed some private classes, ethnography of private schools. Even in private schools, particularly in the early grades, imposition of English only policy is in many ways creating, negative impact on creativity and even thinking and learning freely. In many ways, imposition works as kind of like policing. So, and as a, Gitaji, and I understand how teachers and how public schools are, pressurized, and it's like the bigger discourse. And as a researcher, you have to look at the bigger discourse, and which is very, very powerful.
Yes, sir.
So, but even if you call EMI policy, and I have seen teachers and schools, they are not doing EMI, English medium of instruction. They're actually using kids. They're actually teaching in Nepali and perfectly doing fine. And this is how teachers create their own language policy, irrespective of what is imposed. So for me as a teacher, I cannot just I cannot see my students struggling without learning just because of one language. And I as a teacher who believes in social justice and helping my kids to learn effectively, I create my own policy by using, to some extent, their home language and helping them learn effectively. So Gitaji,
even the teachers are in a great pressure, and so are the parents. So are the parents, sir.
So now, as a researcher, Gitaji, I think, are you doing research on this? It's like teachers are more pressure, as you say, that this teachers' identity issue. See how their identity as someone who has to apply everything that is told by someone else's. They don't, it's without their interest, something like that. So that's teacher identity issue. I don't know whether Nani Babu is here or not. So someone who thinks this is on teacher identity. Now, public school teachers cannot sleep. You know, I have seen that stories as well, heard that story because of English medium. They have to go through dictionary whole night, and they are teaching social studies. So this is very interesting looking from researchers' perspective, and these stories tell how teachers are feeling. Okay, thank you. I think DNG, I think I know this is never ending, and
Yes,
I'm
definitely,
so happy
definitely.
that everyone is interested in language policy. First I thought that interested in language policy. Okay, I knew that now. You know.
My interest has also increased now.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah,
Okay.
because
So
it is very overarching, so it covers all linguistic phenomenon, the language.
yes, yes.
So I'm really interested in family language policy now. So how families from multilingual or multi-ethnic families, like the wife is from one language background and husband is another language background, and how kids are doing. It's a very interesting story. Yeah.
Okay. Last one chance again, I will see Sujit ji. He was, I think, someone is sending me messages. Sujit ji, are you there? Sujit ji.
Hello,
Sujit
sir.
ji.
Sir, no,
Yes.
that wasn't me. It was me earlier, but it's all. I have asked my question.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So let's, Samiksha, you have any question?
I had a question, but I don't know if the time is okay. Okay, maybe last one question. Where do we fit into the global trend of embracing diversity? I think this could be answered. I don't know.
Okay, so when you say global trend, what does it mean?
जस्तै दुनियाँमा कस्तो गरिरहेछन् हाम्रो देशले चाहिँ कस्तो अप्रोच लिइराखेको छ त हाउ डु वी
Okay, sounds interesting. So in education, yes, I think we are we have good practices as well. So for example, not at national level, but some communities are doing wonderful, like Tharu communities and even Newari communities at school level sometimes. So they are doing good in terms of helping students learn English effectively and even mother tongue. So what I'm saying is, you know, the goal of our education for me should be more multilingual, producing multilingual students rather than just, you know, ending up learning just one language and losing their resources. तर हाम्रोमा चाहिँ के भइरहेछ भने in terms of like teacher education, so we are lagging behind. So there is no any sensitization or even teacher education program. हाम्रो तालिमहरू हेर्नुभयो भने it ends up like English language training, science training, math training, but not necessarily. So how these teachers need multilingual pedagogy, that is one. The second, in terms of like community engagement, we are lagging behind. We are not actually recognizing community resources to bring into the classroom because we have like more central textbook, you know, and centralized exams. That's the thing. And Samikshaji, and all of what I would like to highlight is we have just one language policy. And that's why I said that we should move away as a researcher from this singularity of policy to more plurality, because the constitution is one, but there are multiple interpretations of that constitution. And Education Act, Shiksha Niti Euta, but there are multiple interpretations of that policies. So for me, from the perspective of global trend, like where multilingualism is embraced, I think we are still, you know, we are lacking behind in terms of, you know, actions, plans, and programs. We talked a lot, but okay, I would say one thing. Mostly we talk about language rights, adhikar, bhasha adhikar, but in terms of multilingual teaching, multilingual education, we are still lagging behind. And I think, and I completely, yes, I'm hopeful, and I understand it is because we don't discuss a lot, and but we need to at the university, in schools, and among us. It's very
Yes, sir.
important. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Samit, and thank you, sir, for being with us. And it's a wonderful session. Actually, sometimes wonderful means we don't have words now. Then Professor Avasti, why do you say wonderful? What does it mean? He says. So I don't have words when I say these are. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing the ideas on language. Let me say, related to research issues and others. I learned a lot, even the racial linguistics. The first time I got it, even the horizon of the language policy and planning. I just got the snapshot of this today. Thank you so much for being with us, and your presence has made all the participants feel proud as well, and they are sharing their a lot of things. They are sharing the posts and wonderful session with 100 and more people there. Then we started connecting it to the Google Meet, and we shared like that also. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, and thank you all the valued participants for being with us. Sir, on behalf of Scholars Association of Nepal, we'll be awarding you with the letter of speaker, I mean the certificate of speaker, electronically soon. Hope your presence and your sharing will continue time and again. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, so tomorrow we have a Professor Gewali and the one panel discussion on ICT education, and these are two sessions we have. And first solo session by Professor Gewali, and second session will be the panel discussion. Hope we'll meet at 3:30 again tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Have a good day. So I have to call home now.